Hello, everyone. I am Amanda Benjamin.
I'm Paul Carganilla, and we welcome you to our mystifying show in which we explore mysteries of the unknown.
In this live stream and podcast, we'll tell tales of the paranormal and unsolved, while mixing in a little fun and live music as well.
In tonight's episode, we will explore the puzzling and cryptic topic of aliens.
Welcome to the Magical Mystery Hour.
Yes! If you're listening to the audio podcast of this episode, we invite you to find this show on our YouTube channel, the Vaudacity Network, where you can view any images or videos we share throughout these stories and see our faces as well.
If you are already subscribed to the Vaudacity Network on YouTube, but it's a challenge to find the time to sit down and watch each episode, this live stream will be released as an audio podcast.
That's right. So be sure to subscribe to the Magical Mystery Hour wherever you consume your podcasts.
Let's jump right into this. I'm so excited that we finally get to talk about aliens.
And she says that because, and it's a tongue-in-cheek joke, but since the very beginning, when we started doing these Magical Mystery Hours, the answer to every mystery has been like, it could be aliens.
Must
right?
be aliens. Or a
Starting
radioactive
from-
Yeti, but really alens.
Right? Dyatlov Pass.
Yeah.
Sinking of Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
Aliens. They're all aliens. Mary Celeste.
Yep. Aliens.
The kidnapping of Emanuela.
Emanuela. Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's
She
just
disappeared without a trace.
aliens. And then we said, you know what? We were talking about what should we do for the next mystery hour? How about aliens?
And you came across like an alien clothing or something, right? And I was like, it's a sign. It's happening.
Yes, I was in Big Bear.
That's right.
And we were in the village getting a gift for the kids, to souvenirs before we left town. And we were in a shop that had a wall of what are they called? Novelty socks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
And I found a pair of socks of an alien riding on the back of a Yeti. I didn't buy the pair of socks. It was $20. So I was just like, I sent a picture to...
Yeah.
We have a Magical Mystery Hour chat thread,
Yes.
Amanda and producer Craig and I sent a picture, and Amanda was like, well, that solves it. It's aliens.
It's got to be. It's time. And I have a feeling that we're probably going to do this one again. This topic.
Probably. Hello to everybody who's out
Hi.
there in the live chat. Shout out any names you see.
Yeah.
See Joe Warren, Dari.
And Dari just made me laugh. Dari says, I've been saying it on the channel since 2020. Just saying.
It all comes to fruition.
Yes.
Tonight.
David's
Oh,
here.
he's got the picture. That's it.
Oh
That's
yeah.
that pair of socks.
Awesome.
I believe in you.
And it was a Yeti and an alien. It's so perfect.
It was perfect.
I probably would have ended up buying it because I'm weak like that.
If I were the type of dude who wore dress socks with shorts,
Oh yeah.
I would have.
I know.
But instead, I'm just so happy to be sharing the evening with you all. Thank you so much for being here, everybody in the chat tonight. And as Nicole Pierce says, why are the $20 socks the coolest?
It's
That's
true.
right.
I tried to hack them on Amazon too. It didn't happen. But I
Right.
did get this shirt for tonight. It's a NASA shirt.
You got it just for tonight?
Just for tonight. NASA. It's got like a bunch of sayings. It's got NASA on the front and the sleeves. I love it.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And as I was explaining in the live chat before the show, this is the first tonight.
Tonight. On all nights. The alien night.
Alien night. The first night ever in the history of the Vaudacity Network. Two performers picked the same song to do. And what's
we were
wild,
set to be on time today. Like we met early. I had my OBS all ready. My story was done. Everything was good. And then we sound checked.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, what's wild is we've done Polly's Picnics with a theme, with 30 performers, and it's never happened where the two performers picked the same song. We've done deep cuts. How many episodes? 30 something episodes of deep cuts with the same theme. And tonight's the first night it ever happened.
Unbelievable. Now, had you already sound checked before I got there?
I did.
Okay, so Craig didn't know which one you were doing.
Yeah.
So I started playing, and I was like, "Oh, it's so pretty," and then I just hear them like, I hear them laughing, and I was like, "Oh no, what's wrong?"
I think I started clapping. I was like, "Yes."
It's fine.
And so, as I explained, like we both. Christina says, "Didn't you do it on Deep Cuts with Green Day?" And no, because everybody had a bunch of backups on that show, and
nobody. I did it, and so I was sound checking, and then everybody's like, "That was my second choice," but I was the only one who actually did it for the show, so that it was close.
The only one that planned on doing it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Everybody else is like, "Oh, it's like a cool backup, maybe," you know. But this had happened.
Crazy. And like always, we turn what this is into an audio podcast, a shorter, more succinct audio podcast that gets released every other week. We can't hear in our ears what it sounds like to you, but what it sounds like to you is what is going to end up coming out on the podcast. So if you have any feedback in the audience on our audio levels, the mix,
let us
please
know.
don't be free to
don't be free to tell us.
Please don't hesitate, and also feel free to tell us.
Don't be hesitate.
And don't be free. All together.
All together now.
One more thing I was going to say. What else was I going to say?
Oh, sorry.
Was there one more thing of housekeeping to do before we jump in?
Do we have any trigger warning?
I don't know. If you're triggered by alien stories, don't watch.
There is one part also, just because it's kind of a common heebie-jeebie thing. There is one instance of needle in my story. Of a needle.
Okay.
Like a shot needle, but still. So if anybody is triggered by that, just, saying that now. You'll probably know when it's coming. And it's very small. It'll take about 2 seconds of the story, and it's not in detail, graphic. There's no pictures for those who are watching online. But just so it's out there.
As we were saying, we were talking to each other before we went live, and we said, this is an interesting subject, aliens, because it's either a wild conspiracy theories, stories, or it's real, quote unquote, real experiences people have had with abductions, or it's a 1 or 2 minute story about what somebody saw, and you really have to see the video.
I know.
So
I know.
We steered away from conspiracies for tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure both of our stories are about abductions.
Mm-hmm. And I do have one short story, the 1 or 2 minute short story, to add on as well.
And that would be one that was a user or a viewer personal experience.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Can't wait to hear that.
I know.
Well, let's dig in. Let's dig into this music and these stories. And
yes. I love that you play music first. I'm like, it gives me a sec to go, okay. Slow that heart rate.
I forgot. This is what I was going to say, was how gracious. So when we found out we were both planning on doing the same song, we both started to scramble for a backup. And we spent about 5 or 6 or 7 minutes doing the let's go through our chords and see what song we could possibly do and shoehorn into this theme. And then we both came back and went, okay, I'll do my backup. And then we were like,
They're
well,
like,
is anybody
"Wait."
going to do what we picked the first time? And Ms. Amanda Benjamin was so gracious to say, you know what, I'll do my backup.
Yeah.
You
do your
do
thing.
the thing. So this is the thing that we were both going to do,
It's
and
the
now the
thing.
pressure has just,
Yeah.
it's over mounted.
All right.
Here's a little music. Words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither wildly as they slip away across the universe. Pools of sorrow, waves of joy are drifting through my open mind, possessing and caressing me. Jai Guru Deva, nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Images of broken light which dance before me like a million eyes. They call me on and on across the universe. Thoughts meander like a restless wind inside a letterbox. They tumble blindly as they make their way across the universe. Janguru Deva, nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Sounds of laughter, shades of life are ringing through my open ears, inciting and inviting me. Limitless, undying love which shines around me like a million suns, calls me on and on across the universe. Jai Guru Deva, nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change my world.
That was gorgeous. I loved it.
Thank you. And thank you for being so gracious to
Well, I'm glad because
allow me.
I thought it was great. I'm glad you did. I put that in the chat. It's like, I'm so glad Paul did this one.
I don't think I've ever done a Beatles tune as a solo.
No?
I think that was my first solo Beatles tune before.
Wow.
In the history of Audacity.
Another historic landmark.
We're just full of it tonight.
I know. We're going for it.
Yes.
Full tilt.
How fitting. It's a special episode, and there's no secret we're talking about aliens and alien experiences, and there's also no secret that Amanda Benjamin's an amazing storyteller, so I can't wait to hear what story she chose and why.
Ooh. Now I'm like, oh, I'm getting grilled. Well, this is a really great story. If you are into, alien UFO sightings or anything like that, you are going to know this. And I tried to put as much information as I could into it. There's a whole lot out there. But it's just a fascinating story. And if Dari is here by the end of it, I thought it might be kind of cool to put a poll out at the end to see people's opinions of whether or not it happened.
We could do that with my story too. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Dari's like, I'm here, so you can't go away.
She's been saying, let's do something about aliens since 2020.
Yeah.
So she's here for it tonight.
All right. I'm going to start up my music and let's get to storytelling.
Can't wait.
Take a moment and imagine the following scenario. You are sound asleep in your cozy bed. The world is calm and peaceful as everyone enjoys their deep slumber. Suddenly, you are thrust awake, awash in a bright light. As you start to regain your faculties, you can make out the outline of a figure standing in front of you. It isn't human. As they walk closer to you, you realize exactly what you're looking at. It's an alien, and it's coming for you. You are paralyzed with fear. The light shining isn't from a car on the busy street outside your house, but an alien craft. Let me ask you these questions. What do these beings look like? And what about the craft? What does that look like? Well, you probably have a nice image in your head now. Tonight, we are going to visit the curious case of Barney and Betty Hill. This is the iconic case that set the standard for the American alien abduction story and the idea of little green men little gray men, little gray men in their flying saucer.
It's crazy. I picked the same story.
No,
I'm just kidding.
We'll see you next
joking.
week.
I'm totally joking.
We throw in the towel.
We're done. We're out.
Sorry, we're out of time.
I've heard of this story. Mm-hmm. I heard a lot. It was referenced a lot in the research for my story that I'm going to tell. But I've never heard of the story.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Now you will. The year of the puzzling incident was 1961. John F. Kennedy had been inaugurated as president. Alan Shepard was the first American to launch into space. And racial tensions are growing higher and tighter throughout the entire country. In all of this, in the town of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, lived a couple named Barney and Betty Hill. Barney worked for the United States Postal Service, and Betty was a social worker. They were practicing Unitarians and were active members of the NAACP. In case you don't know, that's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And they were considered leaders of their community. Barney Hill sat on the local board of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. They were also an interracial couple. Now today, we might not think much about that fact, but back in 1961, that was a pretty big deal. As I mentioned earlier, racial tensions were mounting, and the nation was nearing the height of the civil rights movement. Interracial marriage was highly uncommon and was often looked down upon in many parts of the country. Despite this, Barney and Betty said that they rarely felt pressure over the topic from their friends and family and community at large. For the most part, it wasn't a huge stress in their lives, and they were very lucky to live where they did and to have such an amazing support system at that time. Their story may have ended very differently otherwise. So let me show you. I have a picture of Barney and Betty Hill for you. So that's our couple, along with their little dog.
Their little pup.
I know. So
they're adorable.
Yeah, they're a great couple. And we'll get a little bit more into their lives. It wasn't, well, the interracial marriage part wasn't too terrible for them. Again, amazingly. They weren't without their struggles. So Barney and Betty came together later in their lives. Both had been in marriages that ended in divorce. Having common ground and an instant connection, they became fast friends and eventually romantic partners. They were soon engaged and married in May of 1960, but it wasn't all daisies and sunshine. Betty, a social worker, worked from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Barney worked the graveyard shift in Philadelphia, which is about a 6-hour drive from Portsmouth. So this gave the newlyweds very little time together. They actually lived apart for a long time. But thankfully, after several months of this routine, Barney was able to secure a transfer to Boston, which is only about an hour away, and the couple were finally able to move in together and actually enjoy their married life. Took them a bit. Finally. Goodness gracious.
Shift work is hard, man.
Oh,
I can say from experience, like passing shifts in the night, never having days off together, it's rough.
Yeah, and let alone if you also live 6 hours apart.
Right. Good for them for sticking it out. Long distance and shift work.
Yeah. Not easy.
That's love.
Yeah. So, on Sunday, September 17th, 1961, Barney, Betty, and their dog, named Delcy, decided to take their 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air on a belated honeymoon trip to Niagara Falls and Montreal. They had a very pleasant trip, but there was a report that Tropical Storm Esther was going to hit the area. They decided it was best to drive home that night rather than risk being stuck in Montreal for the storm. So they headed home. At about 10 p.m., the couple stopped at a local diner for some coffee to help keep them alert for the rest of the 5-hour drive. They expected to arrive home at about 3 a.m., and they could not wait to sleep in their own bed. Just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty saw a bright light in the sky that appeared to move just below the moon and Jupiter, which is very prominent that night, and to just above and west of the moon. And at first, Betty thought it was a shooting star. But when she realized it was only moving upward, she started to suspect that it was something else. The more she observed the strange object, the more she believed it was following them. Now, it is worth mentioning here that Betty was actually very interested in astronomy and the idea of extraterrestrials. This fact isn't that surprising because most of the country was captivated with the same idea due to the recent incidents at Roswell, as well as the fact that there were several movies, TV shows, books, all centered around this idea. I'll get back to my story. Just wanted to throw that out.
No, it's good. Because you need to know the back. What stories have these people heard?
Yeah.
What have they seen on TV?
Yeah, because it all influences how you perceive things.
That's right.
Now, Betty discovered she realized that the object was becoming brighter and brighter. And she finally convinced Barney to pull over so that they could get a good look at the object in the sky. Barney found a scenic picnic area and brought the Bel Air to a stop. Betty pulled out her binoculars and observed what they called an oddly shaped craft with multicolored lights. She also noted that the object was traveling across the face of the moon. Barney, ever the pragmatic man, told her that it was probably a satellite or maybe a passenger plane just flying particularly low tonight. He was anxious to get back on the road, but at Betty's behest, he picked up the binoculars to get a look for himself. Suddenly, the craft, without turning as a plane would, swiftly descended toward the couple. As the realization that this was not a passenger plane or satellite washed over Barney, they ran back to the car and drove through the narrow mountain pass road. As their speed was hindered by the dark and winding road, Betty was able to observe the craft as it stalked them through the pass. Betty noticed that it was briefly hovering above a nearby restaurant and signal tower. As she watched it, she realized that it was about 1.5 times the length of Granite Cliff, which was kind of in their view. It was nearby, kind of hovering in that area. And Granite Cliff, its profile is about 40 feet. So, pretty big craft. And the craft appeared to rotate as it hovered. Thinking that this pause would be the end of their ordeal, Barney and Betty continued driving as fast as they safely could. But it was far, far from over. The craft began moving erratically and appeared to almost bounce through the sky. The fear began to mount as they couldn't imagine how this ordeal would end. About a mile from Indian Head, New Hampshire, the craft descended toward their car. Barney came to a sudden stop in the middle of the road, the pancake-shaped craft filling his entire field of view. Barney, who carried a pistol in his pocket, left the vehicle and made his way closer to the craft. He pulled out his binoculars that he had had earlier to get a clear view of what was happening. He caught a glimpse of 8 to 11 figures looking out the windows of the craft, seemingly gazing directly at him.
What?
I know. I don't even know what I would do.
You see in the window of the flying saucer that's glowing.
Yeah. You see a bunch of humanoid figures.
Right.
Just staring back at you. How terrifying. Like I said, I don't even know what I would do. I don't know. I'd probably just pass out.
And I don't know. This is giving me Mothman vibes. They're being followed home by creatures.
Oh, bringing it back.
Right.
So he saw these humanoid figures in the windows. In unison, all but one of the figures moved toward the rear of the craft and toward a panel. The one that was left seemed to send a message to Barney that said, "Stay where you are. Keep looking." As he watched them, Barney saw that the figures were all wearing glossy black uniforms and black hats. Then he saw what he described as bat wings open up from the ship. So the ship had bat wings basically that went out. And a ramp descended to the ground. On seeing this, Barney sprinted back to the car and yelled to Betty, "They're going to capture us." Terrifying.
So 2 things. It parked on the street in front of him?
Basically, I think it was hovering. But yeah.
With its bat wings.
Yeah.
Second, I think this is the first story I've ever heard where they're wearing hats.
Yeah. I agree.
Do you have a description of the hats or
later on? I think I wrote, I don't remember if it was here or a little bit later, they talked about it. At some point they said it was almost like a military hat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I imagine not like a helmet, but like
a hat or a cap,
You know what I think this is? And Dari's in the chat, she's on it too. I think the answer is aliens.
Aliens. Yes. I think you might be getting it.
I'm onto something. We're onto something, Dari.
Barney started the car in a panic. He drove as fast as he could to get away from the men and instructed Betty to keep track of the object. Betty rolled down her window and stuck her head out to observe the craft. And suddenly, it was directly above their car, filling the entire vicinity with a blindingly bright light. Immediately, the couple heard rhythmic beeping and buzzing sounds that seemed to bounce off their trunk. Almost instantaneously, they both experienced a tingling sensation in their bodies, and the car seemed to vibrate. It felt as if the sounds and the vibration were changing their very consciousness, lulling them to sleep. Now, a side note for me, because as I read this, I was like, how would that work? What's happening? I can't help but wonder if it's something akin to a resonant frequency. If you don't know what resonant frequencies are, every natural object basically has like vibrating frequencies. Okay, like so we give off a frequency as we do things. Everything has a resonant frequency that's its own.
Sure.
And when an object is, or when something matches a resonant frequency, it basically amplifies it and it puts the object under stress, and then it'll break apart. So it's how you can break glass with a single tone. You just have to match the exact wave pattern, and it becomes too strong and the glass breaks. This also happens I've seen it even happen like on bridges. They'll like when they start moving, if they match their resonant frequencies in that and there's stuff happening, it can actually break apart. It's crazy. And
it was lifting up the car?
Well, they didn't say yes or no to that. They said that the car was bouncing. So it could be that it was lifting, or it could just be that it was vibrating, like I say, like with a frequency of some kind.
There's a really good pickup line in there somewhere, though.
Pick you up with my resonant frequency.
There's
got to be something
potential in there. Bouncing off the trunk.
Oh yeah.
There's some treasures in
there
there.
Definitely
we'll find
is.
them. Yeah.
If only we had some like improv comedians around.
Yeah. If I bounce some frequencies off your trunk, can I pick you up?
Oh. All right. Well, we'll continue. About 2 hours later, Barney and Betty came back to full consciousness as they heard another set of rhythmic beeps and buzzes. The couple looked around and, judging from their surroundings, realized that they had traveled about 35 miles south, but they had little to no recollection of driving that distance.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That happens to me when I'm really tired, though, sometimes.
It's true. Or you can go into like basically like a meditative state while
Right.
you're driving. That is something that happens. But feeling very unsettled, they continued their drive home. As they drove, they spoke about their recollections, making a sharp turn at a roadblock, and then they both observed some kind of fiery orb in the middle of the road. Otherwise, their memories were very fuzzy after losing consciousness. At dawn, Barney and Betty finally made it home, but I wouldn't call them unscathed. They experienced some very strange sensations and impulses. Upon arriving, Betty insisted, without explanation, that their luggage had to be kept by the back door and that they could not bring it into the main part of the house. They also noticed that their watches had stopped working. In addition, Barney noticed that the leather strap connected to his binoculars had been torn, but he couldn't recall how it happened. And not only that, Barney's best dress shoes were suddenly severely scratched up. The couple decided to take showers, just wash the whole experience off of themselves, and then call it a night. As he showered, Barney was inexplicably compelled to examine every inch of his body. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he just couldn't stop himself. It was a compulsion. But he found nothing out of the ordinary. Very strange.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they got some stuff going on in their minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what was that caused by being newlyweds? Was it caused by the long hours of driving? Was it caused by being abducted by aliens?
Who knows?
Or maybe drugs?
Maybe. Somebody drugged their coffee at that diner.
Drug the coffee. Ooh, the coffee.
The coffee. You never know. After their showers, Barney and Betty tried to reconstruct their lost memories from after the sounds. They decided to make a drawing of the craft that they saw. The two split up into 2 different rooms to make their etchings. When they came back together, they made nearly identical pictures. And so I have their drawings as well. Let's see. So these are the drawings that they made. I can't see what all the writing says. We'll look at that. But so these are drawings. You can see the kind of bat wings that they're talking about on the bottom one. That's how the windows, right? He said it looked like a pancake. And you can even see the little humanoid figures in the windows. So that's what the two came up with in 2 separate rooms. 2 very similar drawings.
Yeah, those are for anybody listening on the podcast, they kind of look like observatory floors, like the round all window floors.
Yeah.
And now I could see how you could see like aliens looking out the window.
Yep.
If it's all pretty much windows. And yeah, it looks like a disc, like a pancake.
Yeah. So. Finally, after this, the couple laid down in bed. They agreed that they would keep this to themselves for the time being, or at least until they could figure out what had really happened. At last, they fell asleep. A few hours later, Betty woke up and decided to put her shoes and dress that she had worn away in the closet. Upon inspecting them, she noticed that her dress was torn at the hem, zipper, and liner. Later, she noticed a pink powder on the dress as well. She decided to hang the dress on a clothesline, and much of the powder blew off the dress. However, it was stained, and Betty decided that she should just throw it away. But
What was it stained with?
she didn't know. A pink powder.
The pink powder stained it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And her first thought was, okay, let's throw it away. But
I'm just so...
I know.
It's wild. It's like the hem is ripped.
Yeah.
There's weird stuff on it, and you don't remember how it got there. And let's just get rid of it.
I know. She did change her mind, though. She grabbed it. It was like, wait a minute. I shouldn't throw this away. I didn't pull it. Let me see if I can just put it on the screen. Just so you can see. Here we go. I'm going to see if it's big enough to... Okay. So I'm just going to pop this over on top of us really quick. Or on top of you. So that's Betty Hill's dress. So you can see how it's stained pink, like on the arms and at the bottom. That's from the dust and the powder that were on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that visual, because for anybody who's listening to the podcast, it was like a dark purple dress, but the faded pink toward the bottom of the skirt and the sleeves.
Yeah. Whew, yeah, it's weird. So yeah, I'm glad that she decided I'm not going to throw this away after all. And then, so she changed her mind and she hung it back up in her closet. Throughout the years, that dress has been analyzed by at least 5 different labs who have all come back and said that the powder is not identifiable and that it's not of organic origins.
That sounds like diner coffee creamer.
Totally inorganic.
Just can't figure out what it is. Doesn't belong anywhere in your body. Did you know that, side note, do you know that you've used, I don't know if they still do, but for a lot of years, they used powdered Coffee Mate coffee creamer to make the fire come out of the dragon Maleficent's mouth in Fantasmic?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm sure a bunch of our audience members knew that, though.
But, I mean, you can't trust any sort of powder that you can't identify.
Yeah. No.
That's the moral of the story.
No, don't. There was a recent analysis of the dress, and they noted that the degradation of the material is consistent with high UV exposure, and that more analysis should be done to understand how this happened. So that study has not been done, but that's one of the more recent ones.
It's fine. It's just been like 60-something years.
Yeah, it's fine. No hurry.
Not a priority.
No. Just aliens. It's fine. So later on in the day, Barney and Betty examined their car. They noticed that there were shiny concentric circles on the trunk of their car that hadn't been there before the incident. They decided to grab their compass and test it out around the car. When they placed it within a few inches of the trunk, the compass would just spin around rapidly. And then it would resume functioning normally again when they moved it away. So, I don't know how concentric circles get etched on your trunk naturally. Maybe,
And compasses, it's magnetic, right?
Yeah, so there'd have to be something magnetic interference.
Here's a question that I pose to the chat or producer Craig in the background. Does radiation mess with compasses?
Oh, I don't know. I do not know.
Might be something to look at.
Somebody put it in the chat. So Betty decided to call her sister, who believed that she had seen a UFO in the past, and asked for her advice on how to proceed. The couple were still very shaken and couldn't see a path forward. Her sister encouraged her to call the local Peace Air Force Base to file a report, which Betty did decide to do. But knowing that the details might make her sound a little out of touch with reality, and also Barney's reluctance to share this experience, Betty decided to only give some details about the event. On September 22nd, Major Paul W. Henderson took her abridged statement and assured her that it was simply a misunderstanding. Eventually, Betty did give him the entire story. Oddly, Henderson mentioned that there was an unidentified flying object that was picked up by the Air Force radar at 2:14 a.m. that night.
Yeah, there was. It was Mothman.
Yes. But when the report came out on September 26th, Henderson concluded that the couple mistook the planet Jupiter for an aircraft. End of story. What?
Yeah, of course. It was just a plane. Just a passenger plane.
No, it wasn't even a plane. It was just Jupiter. It was just sitting there.
Oh, that's what I meant. It was Jupiter.
That's all.
Hey, I mean, Jupiter is very bright right now.
It is.
Or at least it was last night.
Yeah.
So.
But did you see Jupiter go woo, 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 woo around the sky?
No, you're right. It was probably an aircraft.
So, something there doesn't, I just don't know how you make that your report. I don't know. But,
Military reports are wild, man.
Yeah. It's weird. So on September 29th, Betty started to experience startlingly vivid dreams. She described them as having a higher level of intensity and detail than any dream she had previously experienced. After 5 nights, the dreams stopped as suddenly as they had started. But even without them plaguing her at night, Betty couldn't stop thinking about her dreams all day. She felt that she needed a release, and she tried to tell Barney about them. However, he was very dismissive about them, saying that bad dreams were understandable and that they had this weird experience and they should just drop the subject completely. Unable to let them go, Betty documented her dreams. They went a little something like this. In her dream, Barney and Betty were in their car and they encountered a roadblock. Suddenly, Their car was surrounded by mysterious men. Betty lost consciousness, and when she awoke, she was being led through a dark forest by those same men. She realized that Barney was walking behind her, but he wouldn't respond as she called out to him. He seemed to be in a trance-like state. The men were about 5 feet, maybe 5 feet 4 inches. They wore blue uniforms and a military-style hat. They seemed almost human, but just slightly off. They had black hair, dark eyes, and big noses, as well as bluish lips. Their skin was gray. Upon arriving at their destination, Betty, Barney, and the men walked up a ramp into a metallic disc-shaped craft. Betty and Barney were separated. Betty protested, but she was told by the leader of the group that the experiments would be much faster if the two of them were examined separately. Just then, a man she called the Examiner walked into the room. He had a pleasant and calming demeanor, but she also noticed that the leader and Examiner weren't speaking English. That they were speaking English, but they were hard to understand because they didn't have a full grasp on the language. It was like they had really thick accents. You could just tell it wasn't their native language. They informed... Oh, God.
They were speaking English.
Yes.
With an alien accent.
Yes. So it made it hard for her to understand.
Hard to understand.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They informed Betty that they were trying to understand the differences between their own physiology and the physiology of humans, and that there was really nothing to fear. The Examiner began his collections. He took some of her hair as well as nail samples. He examined her eyes, ears, nose, mouth, throat. He moved to her legs and her feet. And suddenly, this is the part that if you don't like needles, just stop for like 2 seconds, because he inserted a needle into her navel. Betty cried out in pain, but the Examiner just waved his hands in front of her eyes and the pain vanished. Yeah. With the experiments and collections done, the Examiner left Betty for Barney, and she was able to talk to the leader. As she looked around the room, she saw a book and picked it up to see if she could read it. The leader said that she could take it with her if she liked. Then Betty asked where they were from. The leader showed her a holographic star chart with constellations of their homeworld as well as trade routes. After this conversation, the rest of the men reappeared to escort Betty and Barney back to their car. But a disagreement swiftly broke out, and Betty could sense rising tensions. Everything became quiet, and the leader explained to Betty that she couldn't take the book home with her, and that they decided that Betty and Barney could have no memories of what had transpired. Betty warned him that no matter what they did to her, she would remember this. Betty and Barney were escorted back to their car, and the leader instructed them to watch the craft as it disappeared. From there, the couple drove home.
2 thoughts
Mm-hmm.
about the book specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Humorously,
Mm-hmm.
my brain went to, was it like the Book of Scientology or the Book of Mormon or like just because of stupid jokes, but it reminds me of dreams. Because
That's right.
when I realize, or when I suspect I am dreaming,
Yes.
I first check to see if I can read anything.
Yeah, I remember you said that.
Because it's different parts of the brain.
Yeah.
Control dreaming and can like allow you to read.
Mm-hmm.
So if you suspect you might be dreaming, if you look around for words that you can read, you can start to lucid dream, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But
ooh, yeah.
Like it's possible that she just wanted to see if she could read words in this experience.
That's interesting thought.
I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
No,
But
that's cool.
how interesting. Like if I were abducted
Mm-hmm.
and trying to make sense of what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'd be like, can I take this souvenir book? I don't like, it's a really odd choice, I think, for me. But at the same time, if I'm anywhere cool, I want to take something home with me.
Right?
So
something just to prove it happened.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts going through my head. I've never heard this story before, so thank you for letting me butt in and
yeah, anytime. So after documenting these dreams and everything going on, Betty decided to start doing some research and hit her local library. She found a book about UFOs written by retired Marine Corps Major Donald E. Kehoe. After finishing the book, Betty decided to write him and tell him the entire story. He then passed this letter on to Walter N. Webb, a Boston astronomer and a member of NICAP, which is the National Investigations Committee of Aerial Phenomena. Webb met with the Hills on October 21st, 1961, and conducted a 6-hour interview where they discussed every little detail of the event. Webb concluded that they were being truthful about the events that they had experienced. And after subsequent interviews with NICAP, it was recommended that Barney and Betty attend some hypnotherapy sessions in order to recover their memories. Now, Barney was really reluctant about this, but he said he would be willing to try if it would help with the nonsense about Betty's dreams. Insert eye roll here.
That's silly woman.
I know. It's like, come on,
the
Barney.
60s. That's silly woman.
So now we're at March 3rd, 1963. A year and a half after the incident. Wait, did I just skip it? Yeah, okay. They start to feel comfortable sharing their story and decided to disclose the event with a discussion group in their Unitarian church. Then, on September 7th, 1963, a man named Captain Sweat came and gave a formal lecture on the topic of hypnosis to their church. After the lecture, they talked privately with Dr. Sweat and decided to ask if he thought that hypnotherapy would help them restore their fragmented memories. He said that hypnosis could help them and that he encouraged them to ask Barney's psychiatrist, Dr. Stevens, to perform the hypnosis. Now, it wasn't for another couple of months that the couple met with another psychiatrist named Benjamin Simon. Simon performed an initial consultation visit and concluded that the encounter was causing Barney far more stress and anxiety than he was showing publicly. Now, Simon, just so you know, dismissed the theory of extraterrestrials completely. He said it was impossible and that Barney and Betty just deeply believed that it happened. Simon discussed hypnosis with the couple and concluded that the practice could help them uncover what really happened that night. So he starts the hypnosis sessions on Barney and Betty, and they actually continue weekly from January to June in 1964. To keep the sessions legitimate, he conducted them in separate rooms. And he also didn't reveal to them anything that they said during the sessions until after the sessions were over, and when he was convinced that the revelations would not harm the pair mentally. Simon decided that it was best to hypnotize Barney first. Under hypnosis, Barney recalled that the strap of his binoculars broke as he ran from the UFO back to the car. He also remembered driving away from the UFO, but that he felt a compulsion to take a sudden turn and drive into the woods. Almost immediately, he spotted 6 men standing in their path. The car stalled, and 3 of the men made their way closer to the car. He tried desperately to restart the car, but his attempts were all in vain. Simon described his witnessing of the extraterrestrial figures as highly emotional, including outpourings of extreme fear. Barney's dread became almost unbearable as the men approached the car. His breathing quickened. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest As they approached, the beings told him not to fear. But this did not soothe Barney. The leader approached him and told him to close his eyes. Barney said, under hypnosis, "It felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes." Barney claimed that the beings would stare deeply into his eyes and that they had a ghastly hypnotic effect on him. While he was under hypnosis, Barney also gave some of the following quotes. "Oh, those eyes. They were in my brain. I was told to close my eyes because I saw two men coming close to me, and I felt that their eyes pushed into my eyes. All I see are these eyes. I'm not even afraid that they're not connected to a body. They're just there. They're just up close to me, pressing against my eyes." Whew. Yikes.
Don't be pressing against my eyes. There's not a pickup line in there.
No.
For sure.
No. Barney and Betty were then escorted onto the craft, separated, and examined. Barney said that due to the sheer terror of the situation, he kept his eyes closed during the aliens' examination of his body. They conducted similar procedures as Betty described in her dreams. They collected hair and nail samples. They scraped his skin, inspected his eyes, ears, mouth, and throat. He claims that they also collected samples of his bodily fluids, and they examined his spine and counted his vertebrae.
Got to make sure they're all there.
Yeah, each one. On the subject of communication with the beings, he said that for the most part, they spoke a mumbling language that he couldn't understand. When they needed to communicate with Barney, they used what Barney would call thought transference. We hear this more commonly known as telepathy. After the examination, Barney was escorted from the ship and taken back to the car. Feeling confused and disoriented, Barney watched as the craft departed into the sky. That was Barney's hypnosis sessions, in a very quick nutshell.
I'm sorry if I missed it. I've been very involved in the chat as
I know,
well.
I'm trying not to watch, because, yikes. I want to look.
The discussion is fire right now.
Oh, I love it.
My question, if I missed it, did he have any memory or recollection of Betty being there in his hypnosis?
It wasn't mentioned in this, but yeah, that she was there. They were separated. It was, it seems he kept his eyes closed more. So I don't think that he was seeing her. So he wasn't talking as much about her because, you know, in hypnosis, you kind of go through the visuals.
Yeah.
So he, you know, he had these experiences, but
it just made me wonder because at the point where he turned off the freeway and started driving through the forest, like I didn't hear mention of her again. So I was just like,
oh yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, he did acknowledge her being there, that they were separated, but it seemed like in general, it seems like Betty was more aware of what was going on, and Barney was more terrified, more, you know, this is happening to me. My eyes are closed. Their eyes are in my, you know, he was a little bit more introspective in that. So while Betty was under hypnosis, she gave a narrative that was very similar to the dreams that she recorded after the abduction. There were a few key differences, though. Betty gave a very similar account of Barney taking a turn and driving into the forest, which in her dreams, that part didn't happen. She recalled crying out in horror and shock as the men approached the car. She attempted to get out of the car and flee, but the men were instantly upon the door and thwarted her plans. 3 of the men took her out of the car, and Betty recalled trying to kick one of the men and run away. She was unsuccessful. This, she realized, was the cause of her torn dress. Another difference was her description of the beings themselves. She described them this time as having gray skin, large eyes, and being completely hairless. Like Barney, Betty also exhibited extreme distress when recounting the examination, especially when she described the puncture. The sessions for both of them had to be stopped when they got to this part several times. They would get to this, and then they stopped because they were in so much distress that it was dangerous, for their bodies to be going through it. So they stopped until they could eventually tell the story without breaking down.
Sure.
Yeah, at one point, actually, there are some tapes of what happened, and Barney, that's how we have some of these quotes and things, and Barney got up and started running because he was so scared of what happened. While he was under hypnosis, Benjamin Simon had to hold him down and bring him out of it. So it's very traumatic for them. When Betty described the holographic star chart shown to her by the leader, Simon realized that this was a great opportunity for discovery. He gave her a post-hypnotic suggestion that she should sketch a copy of the map. She drew the stars that stood out to her. It was made up of 12 main stars, which were connected by lines, and then 3 minor stars that formed triangle shapes. The solid lines represented trade routes, and dashes represented less traveled stars. I believe there were 16 stars in the end of this. And let's see, this is Betty Hill's star chart. This is what she drew. I was like, I would have no idea how to draw any of this. But that's what she said she saw on the holographic star chart.
What is that thing spraying stuff?
I know, isn't that what it looks like? I am not a good enough astronomer to tell you what all of these things are. But they do just represent, did it say on here? Not yet. There's another picture that I'll show you too. But basically there's just various stars. Again, these solid lines that you see are their trade routes, and then the dotted lines are less traveled routes as well. Now, as you try to decipher it, you might think the bigger things, right, are like a sun or a giant planet, something along those lines. But that was all had to be interpreted. This is just what she saw. While she was interested in astronomy, how does she know what this is? Right? We know about as much as she did.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I'm just getting lots of vibes of long-awaited honeymoon, ripped dresses, powdery substances. I don't know. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
But astronomy's cool too.
Yeah, it is. So after the sessions ended, Barney and Betty returned to their normal lives. Benjamin Simon still believed that the abduction never happened. He thought it was just a combination of exhaustion, stress, hysteria, and the influence of a recent episode of the show, The Outer Limits, which I will say does have a few similarities to their story. But Barney and Betty were still convinced that an abduction had taken place. Nonetheless, all parties agreed that the hypnosis had achieved its goal of helping the couple relieve their anxiety around the incident. They could talk about it, they accepted it, and now that they had these recovered memories, they didn't feel like they were stuck anymore. They could just move on. So, again, they went back to their lives and decided it's now time to move forward. They found the peace and acceptance they were looking for. I would also like to mention that the couple did not seek out publicity or monetization or anything regarding the abduction.
So that was something I was just about to ask. So I'm glad you touched on it. Like a lot of times, if it's a hoax or if people are making stuff up, we talked about this on previous episodes. Like, why would you just make this up? Like, it seems like they just tried to figure out what happened to them and then moved on.
Yeah, that's all they wanted, to understand what had happened to them. They did speak publicly with friends. They were like, all right, we figured out what happened. We feel good about telling you what happened to us now. But again, they did not seek any profits. But on October 25th, 1965, an article was published on the front page of the Boston Traveler entitled, UFO Chiller, did they seize the couple? Now, despite what you're thinking, the Hills did not give this story. Reporter John H. Luttrell was given a bootleg recording of a lecture that the Hills had given at the end of 1963. When he discovered that they had undergone hypnosis, Luttrell illicitly obtained notes and recordings of their session. After the article came out, the United Press International picked up the story, and the Hills became an international sensation. And I also have, let's see, this picture. So this is them after all the stories came out. They're like, all right, well, this is happening. So they're documenting.
They look thrilled.
Right? They're like, okay. Great. We're international stars. Wonderful.
Yeah. This is not the time of the influencers on the social media.
No.
That's for sure.
And like I said, Barney always seemed kind of like he didn't really want everybody to know. Because, I mean, I'm sure you're like, people are going to think I had lost my mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, that time in our history, being a person of color, like you're not trying to grab attention or act crazy in public. And
you just want to fit
in.
I'm
sure he was very, very much just very careful about everything that they said and everything they did.
Yep. After their story gained so much attention, writer John G. Fuller reached out to the Hills in 1966, hoping to gain their cooperation for a book. With the story already famous anyways, literally all around the world, the Hills decided it was time to just tell their story for themselves, and they agreed to work with Fuller. He wrote the book called The Interrupted Journey, which detailed the case, and it also included Betty's star chart, as well as drawings that the couple made of the craft, which we saw earlier. Both of those things. And speaking of the star chart, in 1968, an elementary school teacher and an amateur astronomer from Ohio named Marjorie Fish read The Interrupted Journey and became intrigued by Betty's star chart. Fish thought that the map could be puzzled out if it was analyzed correctly. She assumed that one of the 15 stars must represent Earth's sun, since that was where the abduction happened, and then created a 3D model of nearby sun-like stars that would be able to support life similar to that found on our planet Earth. She did this using thread and beads. You know, stuff a teacher has on hand. She determined that Betty's map represented the system Zeta Reticuli, which is about 39 light years away from Earth. Whew. Now, this has been a hotly debated topic literally ever since.
Wow.
So let me show you this. It's kind of crazy. So this is Betty's star chart, and this is the star chart, the official star chart that's mapped out. So they look pretty similar.
Basically exactly the same.
Yeah, there are some differences, which we'll talk about too. But that's like, what? Wait, what?
But they tried, in the top one, they tried to make it look like the way she drew it.
I mean,
right?
this is how, I mean, they connected the stars. So like, basically they mapped out the stars that are like lining up with hers, and then the trade routes. So like, this is what the lines are added, you know, to be what she would have seen on the track. But all the stars are actually real.
So my question is, the bottom picture is the one that Betty drew or influenced the drawing of?
Yeah.
And then the top picture has to be like somebody made it on the computer to represent what she was probably looking at?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but they look strikingly similar.
They're like exactly the same.
Yeah, very, like I said, very, very few differences, like different lengths a little bit at some points, but yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah. So as I said, but this conclusion has been hotly debated ever since. Fish sent her findings to Walter N. Webb. Remember him? The author from the beginning of the story. He thought that it was a really convincing theory. He forwarded it to the editor of the magazine Astronomy, Terrence Dixon. Dixon, however, did not agree with Fish and Webb, but something unprecedented happened. Astronomy magazine asked for comments and debates on the UFO report. This started in 1974 and is pretty much still debated now. It went on for a very long time. For a year after this issue, there was official. So sorry, I'm gonna go back. For a year, starting in 1974, it was just like an open column. Basically, they're like, "Tell us what you think," right? And you just wrote your opinions on this. And like I said, there was enough material that it went on for a year. Now, I already know which side some of our scientifically minded listeners are going to land on, because Carl Sagan came into this conversation. He said that the star chart was just random alignment of points, nothing more or less, just complete random. Oh, that's all. I know.
It looked exactly the same. It didn't look random at all. Sorry, Carl Sagan.
In an episode of Cosmos in 1980, Sagan showed that without the lines drawn in, the map doesn't look like any map that we actually know of. However, statistician David Saunders said that the odds of making a map that matched all those points the way they did had odds of about 1,000 to 1. So, did she just get really lucky? I don't know.
Mean, yeah, that's like lottery lucky right there. Like,
yeah.
We just drew the same dots on the same parts of the paper, and
it's very strange. This is the part that always gets me. Like, I mean, there's lots of parts that actually get me to the story, but that's one thing I'm like, how? I don't know. Now, throughout the years, the arguments continued. So, like I said, it was like an official column for a year, but it didn't stop after a year. This went on into the 1990s. Fish eventually rejected her own hypothesis after hearing some compelling evidence that perhaps the distances of some of the stars would be different than on Betty's map, right? In 1990 or early 1990s, there was some more like telescope and imaging that, went out and all that. So they said, well, maybe the stars weren't quite right. They'd be different, right? These two wouldn't be connected. So Fish, after hearing a lot of this and realizing that she made some assumptions that might be wrong, she decided to recant her statement and even made an official public statement saying star chart is not real.
That's wild.
I know. So I still don't know how I feel about it because that sure looks convincing.
Right.
Now, I do feel like we should give as much information as possible on this show. I could leave out some of these arguments against the abduction theory, but again, we always want to have all the information and have you make your own decisions.
Sure.
And I also try not to be biased one way or the other when it comes to what I present, right? We're all smart people here. We like to hear stories, but again, we like to make our own decisions. I don't want to feed you your conclusion.
No, we just craft the story.
Yeah. Now, this piece of evidence against the abduction theory is what really has me on that razor thin line between saying it happened or it didn't happen. So far, it's all been really interesting. The star chart, the matching stories, the fact that the craft came up on the Air Force radar system, the UV contaminated dress with the unidentifiable or inorganic powder. There's just so much compelling evidence. But I want to know what you guys think of this one. Jim McDonald, who lived near the area where the Hills were abducted, closely examined the route and determined that the Hills had mistook an aircraft warning beacon on Cannon Mountain for a UFO. He said that the beacon appears and disappears at precisely the same time that the Hills claimed to see the craft. Then, He ascribes the rest of the story to stress, sleep deprivation, and then false memories from hypnosis sessions. So it is an interesting thought, and it does make a lot of sense. But what about all the other evidence? Like, do we dismiss the scratched shoes, the torn dress, the UV exposure, like the circles on the trunk? Like, what about the compass that spun near the trunk itself? Like, do we just throw all that out? I don't know. I feel like my head is spinning just thinking about all these possibilities. I don't know.
Yeah. So, we had a thing where you and I, we get together on the Zooms every once in a while and re-record intros and outros of the podcast so we can release it and it sounds like a podcast.
Right.
And we got together one night and I told you that I was driving home from work that night. I was driving from Oxnard to Moore Park here along the 101 freeway that runs parallel to the Camarillo Airport. And I was driving south on the 101 and a light came up in the sky. This was like 2 weeks ago and hovered above the freeway and got brighter and brighter. It didn't seem like it was moving left or right or toward me or away, and it was moving way too slow.
Right.
And I'd been listening to stories of aliens to prep for this episode.
Yes.
And I started to kind of freak out. At first I was getting scared because I thought that there was a plane coming into Camarillo Airport that had to make like a emergency landing on the 101, and I was directly in the path. But it was just nothing like I'd ever experienced before, and nothing in my brain was making sense of it. Like, right. I was trying to go, okay, maybe it's a helicopter, but the way it was growing and getting brighter and just staying in the same spot, I started to kind of internally panic a little bit.
Right.
Just like, I've never experienced this before, and my eyes have never seen it, and it doesn't make any sense to me, physically, the movement of it and what's happening. And I got off the freeway at my regular exit, and what it ended up being was like some sort of slow moving glider that was actually coming into the Camarillo Airport, but just it didn't move like regular planes moved. It didn't move like helicopters moved. So it had like just instilled this. I'm a super cool dude under stress, under pressure.
Yeah.
Like, nothing really freaks me out. But this experience, like, my eyes were showing me something that my body and my brain didn't recognize or couldn't make sense of. And so that kind of made me afraid. Like, I was scared.
Yeah.
And I could totally see that especially after a weekend of your honeymoon. You're driving late at night,
and you're tired,
and you're seeing something you don't expect to see, you've never seen before, and it's just some sort of weird beacon off the freeway, and maybe that spins them into some tailspin of that. Maybe their coffee also got spiked by somebody at the cafe, and that all just kind of led to it. It's a wild story, and it's super interesting.
Yeah. So, let's ask the audience. What do you make of this story? Were the Hills abducted by little gray men and examined on their spaceship? Or was it a misinterpretation of the environment around them, compounded by stress and exhaustion? I'd love to hear what all of you guys think in the live chat or the comments. Are you a believer? Also, do you have your own experience? I guess we'll just have to leave this as one more unsolved magical mystery.
Amazing storytelling as always.
Oh, thank you.
Let me start that over. Amazing storytelling as always. Give it up for Amanda Benjamin.
Thank you. Oh, there we go.
Fantastic story. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah. I'm so glad I could. It was really interesting.
I can't wait to see the poll results in the chat.
Yeah, Dari, let's hit up that poll. I feel like it should be like it happened, it didn't happen. I don't know. Because like I said, that's sure where I feel like there are reasonable explanations for a lot of it, but there's just certain things that I can't get my brain around. Like, what was that powder? Like,
Yeah.
you know?
It's wild. Oh, there it is. There's the poll. What do you think? I believe. Nah, misunderstandings or mystery.
Yeah. Yeah. I said, this is such a fascinating story. I was like, wow. And I like had kind of heard this story as like a 5-10 minute little story. They get abducted and they do hypnosis, and that's about it, and so I dove into it, and I was like, wow.
That's always the thing, is like you could log on to YouTube and hear the story in 5 minutes or hear it in 10 minutes, but they don't give you the in-depth storytelling and the fun commentary and live chat along the way that we do here on the Magical Mystery Hour.
Yeah. And that's why I love this show.
Love this show. Love everybody in the audience. And got to give some love for producer Craig. If he's around, give it up for producer Craig behind the scenes,
Craig.
making the show happen. There he is.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you. And wow, what an amazing story.
Thanks.
Okay. Craig. If I may inject a little.
Uh-huh.
I honestly believe that there are forces, that other beings out there. Mm-hmm. But until there's proof, I leave it open.
I know, right? I can't. Yeah.
And it's tough because with there's so many things that are unexplained. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's interesting to hear how these stories grow, build, what their origins are, and are they true? Are they not true? Who knows? I mean, especially recently with the weather balloons, or what people were thinking about in the news. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was talk at one point, especially from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is a known astrophysicist, who was talking about the possibility of aliens being involved with this.
Right.
And so, who knows?
I know.
Who knows? Well,
yeah.
And we can discuss a little bit more after.
Ah, there it was. Craig, I was going to pin you. Let's see if this works. Hi, Craig.
There. Hello. Hi, everyone.
We were saying, okay. Paul's like, is Carrie gone? Can we bring him on? And I was like, I don't see Craig's camera on. But hello. I'd like the way it's set up. I should make a window that has all three of us, but I haven't.
Technology.
So I was
but hey, while Craig is here, he can give us a quick midway break while we talk about what's coming up on the network and get ready for my story.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Here we go.
So while Amanda and Paul take a break, I just wanted to share this with you, a couple of things. First of all, of course, if you are enjoying the Magical Mystery Hour, this is episode 6. Please feel free to tip Amanda or Paul. These are their Venmo tip jars. You don't have to, of course, if you don't want to, but it is appreciated because we just like the fact that you are here and enjoying our stories here on the Magical Mystery Hour. The current Magical Mystery Hour episode we are on is episode 8, Mysterious Creatures. I hope I'm pronouncing them right. Seola, Sasquatch, and the Giant of Kandahar. So that's episode 8 of the that's currently on your podcasts. This episode that we are doing tonight will be split up down the road, so look forward to that on your local podcast, wherever you listen to them and enjoy them. Coming up on Tuesday, February 28th, episode 15 of Gaming with Dari. She's got lots of great games that she shares with every one of us that you can watch and even sometimes play while you're online. So please join us. She's got her Ready Player One shirt on, ready to go. Episode 15 starts at 8 p.m. Pacific, and that's this coming Tuesday, February 28th. Then Amanda on Demand is on Wednesday once again. She sings your requests live. I haven't heard what her latest topic is. I know that she's going through the 100 minus now, 30, 35 songs on the wheel from the last 2 episodes. So we'll see what happens. But if you do have a request for Amanda, go to www.amandaondemand.com, and there's a special button there that you can click on. It will take you to a form that you can fill out and recommend some songs for Amanda to do and sing and perform. That's going to be Wednesday, March 1st, 8 p.m. coming up here on Vaudacity. On Thursday, Lovecast with Hunter Ackerman, number 138. He just had 137 earlier tonight, but he's just a man and on a mission to play live acoustic originals and covers, and we get to enjoy him. So join us, Lovecast with Hunter Ackerman, next Thursday, the 2nd of March, starting at 8 p.m. Pacific. And then Paul Carganilla will join us once again in the Cove with Music and Musings. Probably have a few friends. It's episode number 37. That's going to follow Hunter's show this next Thursday, March 2nd, around 9:15 p.m. or so. That's what the typical time is for when we get started. But definitely after Hunter finishes his Lovecast, join us in the Cove with Paul Carganilla and friends. And then coming up on Monday, March 2nd, we are almost there for the 16th annual Walk with Hope, which will be Saturday, March 11th. But what we like to do with the Cove and the online variety shows is to do a charity telethon for suicide prevention. It's going to be a matching Monday where all donations will be doubled. Please join us. All funds raised go to the With Hope Foundation. We had an amazing count from last year. Let's do it again this year. All join together Monday, starting at 8 p.m. for the Cove Telethon, the charity telethon for suicide prevention. And then, of course, coming up, please go ahead and like on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, VH Esquire. Paul is putting together I guess it would be either a podcast or presentations that involve VHS tapes and the big community that is involved with collecting various VHS tapes. So go to Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok and just like at vh.esquire, and that will get you ready. So when things start happening with VH Esquire, you know it, and you're there and ready to go and join in. So that's what's happening on the Vaudacity Network coming up in the next few weeks. And wow, Paul, I can't wait to hear the story that you have joining us tonight. It should be quite interesting and quite nice, especially after following with what Amanda just shared with us.
Yeah, I think it will be. Thank you very much. Give it up for producer Craig and everything he does behind the scenes.
Yay.
All of the technical helps and everything. Yeah. Thank you, Craig. We appreciate you so much.
Yes. Couldn't do it without you.
Love you, buddy.
Yeah.
All right. As we get into my story, my story is
really quickly, though,
Amanda's story and my story are probably like pretty much the most well-known alien abduction stories in history. Yeah. But before we get into it, of course, on this show, we mix some live music and fun storytelling. We end every main episode with a duet between the two of us. So you have that to look forward to. And somebody already hit on it in the live chat and they had no idea that they did, but they did.
What? Wait, what happened?
Oh, people were talking about drops.
Oh.
But before we get to our duet, of course, I have my story. And before my story, of course, is Amanda's
Yes.
song. So
And
Amanda,
I'm going to say, because I said I would not, I just want to know when we want to do it, because I also have because we don't usually have a third part, which is the quick little story from a viewer.
yes,
Do you want me to do that now, or do you want me to do that at the end?
Let's do that right now.
Okay. It's very, very quick story.
This is so you mentioned on Facebook that
I didn't. Do you know what happened? Somebody posted about this on Facebook.
a friend of yours.
Yeah, a Facebook friend of mine posted and said that they had an experience, and I was like, whoa. And I was like, should I respond? Is that weird if I'm like, hey, we have a podcast, we'd happen to be talking about aliens and UFOs? It's like, I don't know. Maybe that's weird. And I was like, no, I'll just do it.
If they're comfortable enough to post it about it on Facebook, like, why couldn't we mention it on our podcast?
So I commented on the post. I wrote out my comment and I said, hey, we have this podcast. We do it as a live stream. Do you want to send me your story? You can send text, video. I wrote this whole thing. And then it said, what I said post is like, this post has been removed by the user. And I was like, oh no. But I was like, okay, that means they don't want to share it. And I was like, well, let me send a message just to make sure, because, sometimes you take things down for other reasons. And this person was like, well, I'm so grateful you reached out, because I just felt, too vulnerable, doing this on Facebook. But I would love to share my story. And they did. So they sent me their UFO story.
This is an anonymous friend of
They did
Amanda's.
say that we could use their contact info if anybody wants to.
Okay.
I know. But the UFO experience, in their words. I've always believed that there is life out there in the universe, on other planets somewhere. I've always been a fan of ufology. One night, driving home in Northwest Connecticut on Route 7 around the year 2015, at about midnight, I saw a UFO. It was just like the ones that other people have seen. It was massive, triangular shaped, with colored lights suspended above me through the trees, and completely silent. There was no chance that it could be anything else but a UFO. It was enormous. There was only a very narrow opening between the trees above the road, and the road was curving, so I could only see it for a short period of time as I drove. I don't know why I didn't stop and try and take a photo of it, but I was completely awestruck by it. Amazingly, the following night, driving home at the same time, I saw it again at the same time. It was even the same spot. Same exact UFO. I will never forget that image in my mind, and I'll never forget that experience. This occurred on Route 7, Northwest Connecticut, on the border between the towns of Sharon and West Cornwall. 2 consecutive nights, and I never saw it again or any other UFO in my life. This is from, let's just say, feel free to use my name and contact info. So this is from Brett Diamond. And if you would like to contact Brett Diamond about this, you use the email bdiamond41861@gmail.com. And he says, thank you so much for adding me to this story. And yeah.
That's wild. I feel like there's a lot of stories of being in forested areas.
Yes.
And seeing it above the road as you're in the forested area driving.
Yeah, I know. I feel like maybe it gives cover for if you're a ship, right? It gives you some.
Or maybe you're looking for something.
Maybe.
In the forested areas.
What I think is interesting about this story, though, is that it happened twice.
Right.
So there's clearly something that was there. Whether or not, you believe that, everybody makes their own opinion. But something was there. Because even if you, go back, you'd be like, I saw it once, it's not there anymore, it's gone. But he saw it twice and the same thing in the same spot. So something's out there.
Right there.
Yeah. Who knows what? So.
Who knows indeed.
Yes. So.
But before we dive into my story this evening, we of course have already established that I stole Amanda's song that she had prepared for this evening, and she so graciously agreed to perform a backup tune.
Yes.
She actually happened to perform this on her solo show last night, but differently.
For sure.
So I will allow her to explain.
Yeah. I decided one of my favorite songs about space. Well, kind of about space related. I decided to do Rocketman, which I love that song so much.
It's a great tune.
And Elton John.
Elton John's a legend.
Yes.
Sir Elton John.
Yes.
And
and I decided, I looked at it like, I haven't even played through it yet, guys, but I'm going to go for it. The chords are all right, so I'm going to go for it. And if you weren't at my show yesterday, looking at you, whoever
Guilty.
you are.
Yes.
No. Here, let me take this. I have a new instrument. This is my new electric guitar. Let me take this capo off for a sec.
Whoop, whoop.
What? Okay, so it's beautiful. Here we go. Isn't that incredible? Here, and then you can see. Whoop. It's my new Gibson. Ugh.
She's rocking an electric guitar. Everybody watch out.
I know. I was like, now I have to learn how to like do really cool electric guitar music. But I'm enjoying like just, playing with it and, learning about it. And yeah, it's really fun. And I know some people have already asked already what its name is. And I'm like, I haven't decided yet.
Can't rush the name.
No, I had a couple ideas, but I just am not positive yet. But it's beautiful. It's heavy. Which I didn't know. I had said that I loved playing Strats. I picked up a Strat and I was like, oh, it's great, and it fits well. And I tried a couple different brands. Obviously, I had tried some Fenders. I tried, Pacifica. I tried some, just various brands. And I was like, yeah, they're all good. And then we're at Guitar Center, just kind of looking around. Like, literally, like, just hey, we're in the area. Let's just stop by. And, because I hadn't tried that many guitars yet. And I just kind of was like, oh, let me pick up one of those Les Pauls, but I knew they're heavy and they don't have a cutout. And I was like, meh. But I'm just going to try one. And I picked it up and I listened to it and I was like, oh dear. I was like, I love their sound. And then I'd pick up the Fenders again. I'd be like, oh, they're all right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's no Les Paul.
That's the third Paul reference on this show so far tonight.
Happening.
But can't wait to hear your new electric guitar. Can't wait to hear you work your way through this song on your electric guitar for the first time ever on the show tonight.
So it's my first time on this guitar. This is an unprecedented first time night. Like,
dude,
it's crazy. My first time with this guitar on this show. It'll be my first time basically like sight reading on the show, not having practiced. It's a lot of firsts, guys.
Never played it all the way through once before.
No, I just looked at the chords like, it's okay.
I appreciate you.
No, I love the song, so.
And you never know if we'll swap out this performance or another performance for the podcast episode. That's why you got to listen to both.
Yeah, because I already have like, ooh, maybe I will. I'll even tell you guys a little thing that happened. I just didn't get to finish it. I even wrote a song for this show. Just didn't get it finished. It's really interesting. It's very different than anything else. Like, so we'll see if I can get it in before the podcast. Maybe we'll add it in, or maybe like it'll be a bonus track somewhere. I'll think about it. So I got to finish that up, guys.
Let's do all of the things.
I know. Well, now that I've talked your ear off.
Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda Benjamin on her brand new electric guitar playing Rocketman by Sir Elton John.
Thank you. All right. Get my camera set. Make sure my guitar sounds good. Oh, capo.
Don't forget your capo.
I know. Goodness. Why is this all of a sudden not sound right?
I've never forgotten a capo.
Never ever. Why don't I like this? Hold on. What's going on? Are you still in tune? Okay. What's going on, capo? Okay. There we go. I don't know. It just wasn't sitting right. I don't know.
They just have to get to know each other.
I know it is the capo from my other guitar. All right, here we go. So, she packed my bags last night, pre-flight, 0 hour, 9 a.m., and I'm gonna be high as a kite by then. I miss the earth so much, I miss my wife. It's lonely out in space, such a timeless flight. Is this? And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh, no, no, no. I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse up here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh, no, no, no. I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse up here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh, no, no, no. I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse up here alone. Mars ain't the kind of place to raise your kids. In fact, it's cold as hell, and there's no one there to raise them. If you did, all the science I don't understand. It's just my job 5 days a week. A rocket man, a rocket man. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh, no, no, no. I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse up here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh, no, no, no. I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse up here alone. it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time.
Give it up for Amanda Benjamin on her brand new electric guitar.
Thanks.
Night reading and performing that song for the very first time.
Yeah, I love that song so much. So now I'm already like, oh, I can't wait to record it. I'm so excited.
Yes. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I loved that we both dove into our backups with just like, what could we do to fill in here? And you were just like, I did this last night on my show, but I did the karaoke version.
I did. It's different.
And so now, like, here's a chance to do it and accompany myself. And that's awesome.
I
Great job.
know. Thanks. I love it. It's been so much fun learning guitar and, getting that skill. It's been great. So
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And you're doing so well. Great job.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, and really
now you
quick.
can relax.
Really quick.
Yeah.
I just checked in on the poll that we put out earlier.
Uh-huh.
Did it happen, Barney and Betty Hill? We have 50% who say I believe.
Oh.
7% say, nah, it's just misunderstandings. And 43% say mystery.
So just over
just right half think
just over the majority believe?
Yeah.
The majority believe.
Yeah. Of our viewers, they think it happened.
Believe in the mysteries.
I know. Oh, right. Sorry. They're like, hey, we can't see Paul because I forgot to change my camera.
Probably a better show that way. Yes.
Because I can look at our Zoom and I'm like, oh, there's Paul. And I forget to look at our OBS.
Yeah, we're talking to each other on Zoom, but we're not seeing what everybody's seeing. We're not hearing what everybody's hearing. We're in the dark here.
Yeah, it's my fault that Paul wasn't. They're like, Paul, turn your camera on. I'm like, no, it's me. I was looking at Paul the whole time. Hoarding Paul.
All right, so we can dive into my story. And this is, as I mentioned, Amanda's story and my story are probably the most well-known, probably the most talked about stories about alien abductions. If you search the interwebs and the internets, I hadn't heard Amanda's story because, but I knew about it because of the research that I did on my story. And mine is about what happened to a group of 7 lumberjacks or loggers in the hills of Arizona in 1975. This is actually the story of Travis Walton and the rest of the group there in the Apache Seatgreaves National Forest in Arizona. This is kind of what it looks like here. And it is a thick, lush, foresty area in Arizona near the town of Snowflake. It's kind of a funny name for a town, especially if you think of like Arizona as being like hot or deserty, but it also gets a lot of snow during the winter. That's where it is in the map if you're watching on YouTube, in the whole bigger picture of the United States. And that's where the story takes place. This is a really interesting story that was made into a movie, a Hollywood dramatized movie called Fire in the Sky. But that movie was all just overblown to the actual original experience that happened to these. You can keep that picture up, Craig. That's good. These 7 guys. What blows me away about this story, and what is still super important today, is that this is still the most like factually witnessed. There's not a whole lot of evidence for or against like physical proof, other than the witnesses, that the eyewitnesses that have gone on record, the polygraphs that have been taken, the lack of any type of actual legit debunking of this story. So this is super important. If you haven't heard the story, or if you haven't seen the movie, I look forward to introducing it to you this evening. And if you have heard the story, this is always fun to revisit because of all of the factual stuff that is still on the table in real life. And it is also just if you've seen the movie, just know that it's not close to what the movie Fire in the Sky actually is. I mean, it's similar, but it's not close. So these are the 6 dudes. This is the group. They are lumberjacks. They work in the forest. They're actually contract out to a larger company that is in charge, that like is part of the government that's in charge of controlling wildfires. They contract out to the top man, Michael Rogers, who we'll see his face in just a minute, and he hires guys to go out and clear trees in the forest strategically, so that if a fire does break out, it doesn't spread. And so they'll end up cutting down a bunch of trees and leaving them in a clearing that another crew will eventually come and burn all the cut down trees that are in the clearing. This is a lot of hard work, grunt work, and you have to be clear-minded, you have to be sober, you have to be a well-rounded individual to be able to get along with dudes that you don't even necessarily like. They're not friends. They are people who are hired by a main dude, like say somebody got hired to like provide a band for a wedding. Maybe you knew the guy who was hiring people and you came in and you worked the job and then you went your separate ways. That's these 7 dudes. The story is mainly about Travis Walton, and this is him around the day that it happened. The event that we're talking about happened on November 5th, 1975, and this is a picture of him from around that time. And these are the other 6 guys in the group. There's Michael Rogers, who was, of course, the guy who booked everybody else. He made the phone call that said, "Hey, come out and work. I got this 2-week-long job. Come out. We're going to do this." The rest of the guys' names were Alan Dallas, John Goulet, Ken Peterson, Steve Pierce, and Dwayne Smith. Just a couple of notes about the characters of them. Ken Peterson, who I guess is in the lower right there on the screen. He's a very religious man. He goes to church and he's very all about honesty and all of the all the God-centric good traits of people. And then the guy in the top center, his name is Alan Dallas, and he's kind of hot-headed dude that caused some problems with Travis Walton before they went out that day, that would actually make him the subject of a murder investigation. And so that's interesting to know. But the main thing is, these dudes, they're not friends. They don't hang out after work. They don't go out in the forest and drink, do drugs. They go earn their money and head home at the end of the day and say, "See you later. See you when I see you." So this is the gang. It's seven dudes going out and doing some work for a couple of weeks on this project. So the chemistry in the group is not, as I mentioned, like jovial. They don't go out and joke all the time. It's very laborious work. They go out, they're using chainsaws, they're cutting down trees and trying to watch each other's back and make sure nobody gets hurt. But at the same time, you're working all day long, and sometimes It's a work relationship. It's like, let's work together, let's get the job done. That's what it is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What's amazing to me, and we can loop around to this back at the end of the story, but there is a documentary that was released recently, in 2015, so 7-8 years ago now, and a lot of these guys are still alive, and a lot of these guys were interviewed for this documentary 7 or 8 years ago, and still, like, when you watch it, if you have the Roku channel on your smart TV or your Roku, you can watch it. It's free, and you can watch these guys talk about this night in 1975, just like normal human beings who experienced something, and their life was completely changed by it, for the good or the bad. It's wild. Amanda, have you ever heard of this story?
I might have. I'll have to hear some more details. I think I have seen one of those short little 5-minute videos, but I'm not positive. So I know I remember one of them in the woods. Maybe I remember something about work.
Yeah.
So,
well, if you watch alien shows, if you went on YouTube to try to find alien stories to tell for a podcast, you might this was probably one of the top ones, because this remains highly regarded as like the number one most credible alien abduction experiences in history.
I want to know how this like hot-headed guy ends up in this story. I'm like,
great question.
There must be something, because we're talking about his personality. I'm like, what happens?
And it was the hot-headed guy we questioned on the mysterious lighthouse.
Yes. Is that
episode, right?
Oh, there's time travel involved. There's
so this is just a little aside to the actual story, but this Alan Dallas, who was on the crew, he ended up trying to pick up Travis Walton, the main guy of the story, describes it as one of his girls. Alan Dallas tried to go to a bar one night and pick up on one of Travis's girls. And they ended up getting a fight in the bar, Travis and Alan. And Travis won, according to everybody. Beat Alan up, basically, in this bar. Won the fight, proved himself to this girl. And they were supposed to go to work together in the forest the next day, cutting down trees together. They ended up getting in like a shoving match at Mike Rogers' house before they went out into the woods to log. And Mike calmed them down and was like, bro, guys, we can't, you guys need to chill. Can we just chill? And they're like, yeah, we'll chill. At some point, Alan cut down a tree that came kind of close to where Travis was. And Travis was like, man, I can't work with you if you're going to be totally unprofessional like this. And so there was a little bit of tension there. So, but for the most part, overarching, these 7 guys worked together all day long that day fairly well. They all traveled to work together in the same vehicle, Mike Rogers' vehicle. He had a two not story, but 2-seat pickup truck, like a big ass pickup truck where three people could sit in the front and 4 people could sit in the back seat.
Yeah.
Like one of
what
those
do they call that?
cabs.
Yeah, I guess there's a term for that.
Extended
double
cab,
something.
Fat cab.
Also, like, I keep going back to that, like, almost getting a tree on or knocking a tree on him, and I'm like, you're a lumberjack. Like, you don't just accidentally do that.
Yeah, it was kind of close. He was just like, Travis remembers, like, it shouldn't come that close.
That's what I mean. Like, that's your job. You know.
It's kind of sending a message. Like, you beat me up last night in the bar. I'm going to cut down a tree.
Yeah.
And possibly kill you.
Yeah. It's such a power move when you think about, like, look how good I am. Like, if I wanted to kill you, I could. I just don't want to. Like, what?
I love that aspect of the plot, though.
I know. Like, I keep saying, I feel like their personalities have to have something to do with something. We'll see.
Right. So all of this to say their job is to stay clear-minded
Right.
and work safely. And as later on, people would just kind of imagine they were out there drinking and doing drugs all day before this thing happened. They're just like, no, we wouldn't do that. We were working and we were doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting close to sundown. They pile back into Mike Rogers' truck and they head back into town. And they said it took about an hour to get back into town just based on the roads. And it was only about 10 miles outside of Snowflake, but the way that the roads and the backcountry and the forest were,
it takes a long time.
Yeah. So they're all driving back and the sun's going down and it's getting dark enough now that they're starting to notice a sort of strange, out of place glow coming through like the top of the tree line and through the trees. The trees are now creating like silhouettes by this mysterious goldish hazy glow.
Ooh.
And the way Travis describes it is he saw it and started looking at it, but everyone else in the truck was chatting. Travis was in the front passenger seat.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly, everyone kind of just started noticing it, and the conversation in the truck died down.
That's so cinematic.
Right.
Like, you imagine the one guy looking out. I'll go this way so I'm still in my microphone. Like, one guy looking out the window and just, the whole, everything is happening around him, and then just, like, that's very... I'm sure that's not a movie.
They made it into a movie.
That's the real life. That's real life part.
This is a real life part. This is how he describes it.
Yeah.
And so he starts to think in his head, what could it be?
Mm-hmm.
It's hunting season. Maybe there's a new big camp over there.
Okay.
All these things are going through his mind, everybody's mind. And then they just start to all collectively realize this is interesting and different. And Mike, who's driving, he thinks, that kind of appears to be out in the area that another crew had cut down a bunch of trees and done their work last week. Let's go see what's happening.
Oh, go toward the light, huh?
Yeah. So they take the back roads. They drive toward wherever this glow is coming from. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as they reach the clearing, so there's a road for the clearing, and then there's the clearing that the loggers cleared. They find this. This is the best illustration that they actually used in Travis Walton's book based on what they saw. And it's just hovering above the tree line. It's what everybody described it as, like a gold glow. So I don't know why it's not gold in this best illustration, but it's like a goldish glow. And the craft is about 20 feet wide, they say, and about 8 to 10 feet. Is it wide? Top to bottom? Is that wide? Tall?
Yeah. Tall.
Is tall a thing for a saucer? Not sure.
That's how I would describe it. I mean, height. Yeah.
But they're all 7 of them see it. And Travis is a really interesting guy because he's always the first person to point out something, a bear or some sort of wild animal in the forest. And then as soon as people turn to look, it's gone. Oh. So his instinct is, this is totally out of this world. This is something no one will ever believe. I need to get as close to it as I possibly can. So Mike stops the car at the edge of the clearing, and Travis throws open the door, the passenger side door, and runs toward the craft. because he, in his mind, as he says in interviews, expects as soon as the craft thing knows that these people
Right.
have seen it, it's going to take off.
Yeah.
And he wants to get as close a look to
Yeah.
as he can.
But don't
So
go alone. That's
truck
not
stops,
good.
he throws open the door and just basically sprints
No,
toward
take somebody
the
with
craft.
you.
So he gets as close as he can to it. There's, like I mentioned, a big pile of downed trees and wood in the center of the clearing that was waiting to be burned.
Okay.
So he can't get directly under it, but he gets as close as he can to being directly under it without actually being directly under it. And he's just like surprised that it hasn't left yet. So he stands frozen where he is, staring up at this craft, and he can hear the guys in the truck screaming at him, "What are you doing? Get back here!" And he's just like kind of in awe. And once he realizes like it's not going anywhere, he starts to feel super vulnerable.
Right? This is not what I expected.
He completely expected it to bolt, and now it's not. And he's just like, "Ooh, okay. Now I'm just
Plan
out in the
B.
open all by myself."
Yep. That's why I said bring somebody with you, at least, in it together. Outrun the other guy.
Around that time, the craft starts to wobble and spin.
Ooh.
And as it does this, it starts to emanate a sound, much like in your story, I think. He describes it, and everybody in the car, like all 7 of these dudes are watching this happen.
Okay.
They describe it as metal rubbing together, metal on metal, but the full spectrum of sound.
My ears just went.
Right.
They really did. Like, I had to shake it out because I was like, no, stop.
I listened to a bunch of his interviews in prep for this, and he commonly describes it as the lowest lows on the spectrum that you feel vibrating in your body, and also the highest highs that pierce just you feel in your brain. So it's the full highs and lows, and both on top of each other. Kind of starts to feel like you're being pulled apart by sound.
Yeah. See, I'm telling you, resonant frequencies.
Exactly.
I really think there's something to that.
So immediately he feels like he needs to duck and cover. So he jumps closer to the biggest log that's in the middle of this wood pile, and he's just like, "I've made a total mistake. I don't know what I'm doing here." He's feeling the sounds, the lows and the highs, and the guys in the truck are screaming at him, "Get back here, get back here." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, I got to get back to the truck." So as soon as he stands up to run back to the truck, he realizes he's the closest he's been to the craft so far, because he had gone forward to get under that log, and then he springs up. And as he does that, he notices he says he's about 10 feet away from it at this point.
Whoa.
And he would feel a shock, an electromagnetic shock that knocked him unconscious. He just said it felt like, he describes it as you're playing football and you get hit by someone you didn't know was coming. It was just like a
Yep.
The men in the truck, the rest of the crew, would describe it as, he stands up, a beam of light comes out of the UFO, strikes him in the torso head area, lifts him up off the ground, fires him against the ground, and drags him 20 feet. They said, the whole crew says he went immediately limp. They were all 100% sure he was dead. They just watched when a dude from their crew get killed by a flying saucer.
What?
So Mike Rogers, the dude driving, throws it in reverse, peels out, turns around, gets out of there.
Yeah.
They're driving. It's described by all of them. And if you watch this documentary on Roku, like they're grown men now talking about this, and you can see how this affected them emotionally.
Did you tell us earlier? You probably didn't. I just can't remember about how old they were.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't. They were all in their 20s.
Okay.
Travis was 22 at the time.
Okay.
And they were all like mid to late 20s, pretty much.
Wow.
And they're like, some of them are sobbing. Some of them are just screaming. Like they just witnessed something they never thought they would see in their lives. And someone's dead now. And so they start to formulate a plan as they're driving, and they see like a truck of hunters with something made them realize it was the hunters in the truck. So they started to think we can stop them. We can get guns and go back.
Although, quick side note, I just imagined like a whole car full of hunter Ackermans. You're like, it was full of hunters. And I was like, wow.
That might stop a UFO. I'm not sure. But eventually they can't stop the hunters, and they have to make a decision. Mike stops the truck, and he's like, we got to go back and get his body, or save him if we can. And there's arguments between them, and Mike eventually says, I'm going to go back. This is my truck. If you don't want to come, that's fine. Stay here and wait. I'll pick you up. And nobody wanted to do that in the woods alone at night.
No.
So they all go back. They all go back to the place where they left Travis, and they all remember seeing, as they got closer and closer to the site, the light started to rise and rose up and then exited northwest. So the UFO took off. They get back to the clearing. They find the spot where Travis was, and he's gone. They start looking around. They're searching everywhere. They can't find him. They're freaking out. What if it comes back?
Right?
For one of them.
Yeah, your friend is gone. You have to start thinking about yourself.
So they get back in the truck. They drive back to town. Again, it's like another hour before they get back.
Yeah.
And the whole time they're just all in shock and trying to figure out what to do. Like, what do you do next?
Okay. Report a missing person.
Some suggested, let's just go home. So eventually Ken Peterson, who was the churchgoer guy and just like did not want this on his conscience, was like, we have to call law enforcement.
Yeah.
And of course, Mike Rogers, the head of the gang, was like, yeah, I can't have a guy go missing and just.
Yeah. And then what, tomorrow you're like, oh yeah, this guy, we saw him. Right. Like, no.
Yeah. Hey, my son didn't come home. What are you talking about? But yeah, they all like kind of agree. We're not going to lie about what happened.
Right.
Because we all saw it.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this on Magical Mystery Hour so many times. Shared experiences.
Yeah, that's always a really compelling thing. And I always say, like, yes, hysteria happens. You can have a shared hysteria, but I don't know. Like, yeah, a shared experience is a big deal.
Yes.
It really is.
So they decide to call law enforcement. The sheriff shows up. And the deputy that meets with these guys in this parking lot, it's like a parking lot of a shopping center. And he noted like a couple of the guys were sobbing. They were all just kind of out of it. And somebody told him an account of what happened. And he was just like, oh, okay. This is weird. Let me call the sheriff. I think it was a deputy that met with them the first time. And then the sheriff came out and heard their stories. And the sheriff could sense really quick, like, something big happened here tonight. Let's go back to the station. So they take the 6 guys back to the station. They separate them as they would if there was any sort of murder or crime or anything like that. And they take separate statements.
Okay.
And each one of their 6 statements match up. They're exactly the same story. So as incredible as the story is, the sheriff's office is just like, we have to investigate this as per what is being told to us.
Right.
And the first thing they do is they're just like, do you guys mind going out with us tonight and showing us where it happened so we can look for Travis? And they're all just like, sure, yeah, whatever. But they're all just so emotionally shook up.
And
they all go back.
This sounds so much like what happened in the Mothman story, right? With the 2 couples, and they had to go back out with the sheriff, and it was devastating for them to try and go back.
Experience.
Yeah, it's very similar. So you can see though that that's obviously procedure, because the same, sequence. The people come in, they tell them what happened, they investigate exactly what they say, they bring them back out. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
that these 2 stories are lining up so well.
I mean, it would be the same thing for any sort of crime, really. Yeah. Like if you came to the police station and you said, I witnessed this, they'd say, okay, let's go check it out.
Yeah.
Show me what you saw.
And wouldn't it be so easy for them to be like, no, like it's interesting. Somebody comes in and says this UFO, and they, like, all right, let's go.
So they go back out, and that night they can't find anything. They find the spot that it happened. They find the tire tracks from the truck peeling away, and they find where they say Travis's body was dragged. They don't find Travis. They don't find any other sort of evidence. So
there were no tracks or anything?
Tracks?
Like, because I was thinking if his body was like dragged, or was it dragged through the air?
Oh, no. Yeah, no, there wasn't any evidence of him being moved after his body was dragged. So the sheriffs are just like, this is wild, and I don't know what to think of this, but we will file the missing persons report, and we will mount an investigation or a search party for the morning when the sun comes up.
Okay.
And so the guys are like, yeah, we'll help out as much as we can. Please let us know if we can. And so the sheriff says, yes, but be part of the search party. Come on out. So the next day the search starts, and it's a huge search. There's helicopters. There are the dogs. The dogs catch the scent of Travis, and it doesn't go anywhere past where he was dragged.
Oh, I was gonna say, so they actually like found the scent in that spot. Ooh.
And all sorts of people were out there, and one of the I think it was Mike Rogers, noticed a gentleman in like a scarlet jumpsuit with a Geiger counter that kind of looked like a metal detector. He's kind of scanning the ground in the area, and Mike approaches him and says, what does that do? And the gentleman said, oh, it measures for radiation. We like to, if this reading hits 3, we're very interested in that. But what's happening right now, it's all 1s and 2s and all just kind of stuff that happens in nature. I haven't found anything. And so Mike starts to think, and he thinks, would it work on me? Like, I was there. Can you scan me? And so the guy like waves it on him, and he's just like, no, there's nothing there. And then Mike starts to think, well, I've changed my clothes. I've showered. I have my helmet that was in the back of the truck when this all happened.
Okay.
I'll try that. And so he brings it over to the guy with the Geiger counter, and he scans it, and
I was wondering if it was close enough. Oh.
It registers a 6 on his meter, and the gentleman who was measuring it went, okay, and turned around and just walked away.
No, I need more information than that.
And so Mike goes, yeah, exactly that. No, I need more information than that. So he goes and he finds the sheriff, and he says, who is the guy with the scanner, the guy in maroon suit, the scarlet suit.
Oh no.
And the sheriff's like, what?
What? Oh no.
And he says there's a guy, it looked like a metal detector. He was wearing like a jumpsuit. It was like dark red. Who was that guy? And the sheriff's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
No.
Never saw him again. That guy left and was
Wait, and he
gone.
took the helmet or no?
He did not take the helmet.
Okay.
No. Just left.
Like,
So
what was that? Some guy, like, okay, like a UFO hunter who, like, I heard this on the police scanner, or was it like one of like the Men in Black, but not Men in Black?
that is the
but, like,
overarching theory, is that he was from the government
yeah.
and was the first first arm of the government to reach out to this situation and be like, is this legit or no?
I
So
feel
that
like
is
the
still a
red
mystery.
jumpsuit has got to be some, like, it's got to be
Maybe.
something. I wonder if we like Googled men in red jumpsuits. Government men in red jumpsuits.
Never know.
Don't just Google men in red jumpsuits, because who knows what'll happen.
Especially if you're on your work computer.
Oh no.
So the search ends up lasting days. It goes on and on. It gets bigger and wilder, and while it's happening, people are talking about it. News agencies are picking up word about what's being said to have happened here. And law enforcement is getting pretty frustrated, and they start, as the crew is still helping out with the search each day. The families come in from out of state. Everybody, Travis's family's everybody's worried about him. And people start to make comments to the guys on the crew from law enforcement and from the search party, like, guys, just please tell us where you hid his body. Like, obviously you guys got in an argument, something went wrong, you made up the story to cover up his death or his murder. Did somebody drop a tree on him? What's going on here?
I mean, they did have tension.
People started to remember the fight in the bar with Alan Dallas, who was on the crew. One of Travis's brothers actually went to the wood pile and started tearing wood off the pile, looking for Travis's body and screaming at the crew, like, where is he? Show us where he is in here. Like, it was a very intense thing. So the crew just kind of said, what can we do to prove to you that we're telling the truth? Do you want to take you want lie detector tests? You want polygraphs? And the sheriffs went,
sure.
Yes, absolutely. We would love that. But not only do we want polygraphs, but we're going to get the best, because now it's become like the word in the media.
It's a big deal now.
We're going to get the best polygrapher that we know to come out here and test you guys. So they put out a call for a gentleman from the Arizona Department of Public Safety. His name is Cy Gilson, and he is known as the best. They set up a polygraph. The soonest they could do it was November 10th, which would be 5 days after the incident. But they've been searching since the incident. In the meanwhile, law enforcement is getting eyewitness reports from other eyewitnesses to the UFO that night. There was a hunter out that evening, not Hunter Ackerman. A hunter and his wife were out in the wild, and they were a good ways away from it, but they went to law enforcement and they said, what these guys saw, we saw too, just from like a lot further away. And the hunter actually worked for the government, the United States government. So like there was that whole bit of credibility to his account.
Or were they planted there? You're like, he worked for the government. I was like, was he wearing red?
There was a group of fishing buddies who were fishing at a lake not too far away, who said they saw what these dudes saw. But from further away, the lights through the trees and then it leaving and everything. But, the law enforcement's not telling the crew that. And They're just like by Saturday the 8th, which is 3 days after it happened, it had become international news. Like news networks from around the world were talking about this alleged alien abduction that had a bunch of eyewitnesses, to the point where it was like paranoia. Like people were prank calling all day long the sheriffs with like jokes. Like, oh, it's not an alien. Ooh, this
like
and
they
that.
don't have enough to do. Come on.
People are being ridiculous, calling in false leads, and other even detractors saying like, I know Travis Walton and I saw him in Colorado yesterday. And so they would investigate all of these leads and find out that they're all just junk. But for the most part, at this point, they're just looking for the body.
Yeah, that's what you would assume, right?
Right. It's November,
yeah.
and they say like you wouldn't be able to survive overnight. How cold it got there.
Yeah.
Let alone 3 or 4 or 5 days.
I know. I was thinking about how we were. You're talking about how the team could be suspects. And I kept imagining, they got into this argument. You talk about them covering it up, and it's like that would be a great place because they're gonna go after you said they're burning all this stuff, right? That's the plan. Is they're gonna burn
down trees.
So wouldn't that make sense to do something with the body where they're gonna burn it?
Yeah, Dave Hill's in the chat. He says he was living in Arizona at the time. You have no idea how high this story was.
Wow.
It was sensational.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. And as everywhere as how huge this story was. And yeah, I mean, this is before social media, obviously. So you had to wait for the evening news or the newspaper in the morning, but it's still just a huge, ginormous story. And so finally, Monday, November 10th comes around. It's now 5 days, 4.5 days since he disappeared. And Cy Gilson comes in to do the polygraphs on the 6 dudes. And polygraphs are intense. I've been through several for potential jobs.
Oh, okay.
That I've my career that I've tried to get into. And it's so there's different levels of passing. There's like you totally passed. And there's inconclusive, which is like, we're not sure if you passed or not. And there's no, you didn't pass.
Right. I've heard that they're not all that reliable as far as truth telling, because it's about your reactions. So if you're good at your controlling your body's reactions, then it's really
it's all about your body's physiological reaction to questions. Like how comfortable are you answering that question and acting like you're telling the truth when you're doing it.
If there's somebody questioning me, I'm gonna be like, what's your name? Oh god. Do you mean my full name? First and last? Middle? That would be me.
So they bring the 6 dudes in, this state-of-the-art polygrapher, and 5 of them passed with flying colors, and the 6th came back inconclusive. So none of them came back, you did not pass.
Right.
Which is wild for the media, just sets itself on fire again. It's just like, how did none of them fail this polygraph test?
Right.
About this story.
But none of them passed with flying colors either.
All 5 of them did. 5
Wait,
of them
I thought
passed.
that was pass. I thought it was pass, fail, and inconclusive.
5 of them passed with flying colors.
Oh, I missed that. Okay. I thought you said they were all. That's why I was like, that's interesting.
No. 5 of them passed with flying colors.
Okay, got it.
1 of them was inconclusive.
Okay.
And would later retest and pass. But
that's later. Later.
So
later.
The media is just on fire again. It's like, how is this happening? How is this even possible?
Yeah.
So that night, close to midnight, Monday night, November 10th, 5 days and 6 hours after this incident occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Travis Walton's brother gets a phone call from a person claiming to be Travis Walton. He says his voice doesn't exactly sound like Travis, so he
Mm-hmm.
thinks he's a prank caller. He
Right.
says, I'm in a phone booth near Heber, which is a town kind of close to Snowflake. Can you come pick me up? The craziest thing just happened. And his brother's like, yeah, right, whatever. And he says, no, it's true. It's really me. And his brother says, who are you? And he says, it's me. It's Travis Walton. I'm your brother. Please come pick me up.
Mm-hmm.
Side note, at the time in Arizona, you didn't have to pay for call at a payphone.
Oh.
In a phone booth, they had the actual booths along the highway.
Right.
You
Okay.
just had to ask the operator to connect you to a certain person or a certain number, and they would
Okay.
take your name. So the operator on this call actually took his name, Travis Walton, and so listened in on this call,
Oh.
which was totally like,
Yeah, that's a little suspect. They read about it in the paper and they're like, I'm gonna listen.
So the brother says, okay, I hope you are who you say you are, I'm gonna come pick you up. So the brother leaves, and immediately the operator calls the police and says, hey, I just took this call where this person's saying that Travis Walton is now at this payphone in Heber.
Mm-hmm.
So the brother's driving there and the police are driving there, and brother gets there first, picks him up. Travis is 12 pounds lighter than he was 5 days ago.
Ooh.
Gets in his car, and his brother says, we got to get you to a hospital. So he
Right.
starts driving him to a hospital, and Travis is just totally out of it. He's not talking. He's just in a trance. And his brother's like, we got to get you checked out, man. What's going on? And Travis says, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened. I was out in the woods. We saw a UFO. And then that's the last thing I remember is it like shocked me.
Okay.
And his brother said, right, but where have you been?
Yeah.
And Travis said, it happened. It just happened a little bit ago. And his brother goes, dude, feel your face. And then Travis feels his face, and he feels 5 days worth of beard on his face. And he goes, what?
Yeah.
And his brother says, you've been gone for 5 days. And Travis just doesn't believe him. He's like, what? No, this just happened. And he's like, oh, no. We're going to go get you checked out. We're going to get you tested. So they get to the hospital. They don't tell the doctor like why he's getting checked out, but can you please make sure he's okay? He's severely dehydrated. He's drinking as much water as he can. Like I said, he's lost 12 pounds. He's but they run like every physical scan you can, every brain scan you can, and he's physically fine other than just being dehydrated. And so his brother's just like, I got to get you home. You have no idea what's been going on.
Right.
And Travis is like, yeah, no, I have no idea. So by the time they get back to the house, there's just media news vans outside the house. And Travis can't believe it because he thinks this just happened.
Yeah.
And they get into the house, and the sheriffs are calling. They want to talk to him. The media wants to talk to him. Everybody wants to talk to him. And he's just like, the family is very protective. Just like, let us like take care of him first. We have no idea what happened. Eventually, the sheriffs get to have a conversation with him, and he tells them his story of what he remembers. Now I'm going to supplement his story about what he remembers with what he ended up, all of the details he ended up pulling up after he went under hypnosis later on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all going to be kind of combined in the story of what happened to Travis as he remembers it.
Okay, this is interesting. And I'm trying to figure out ways, because so he was checked out, and because there are, certain things mentally that can happen where, you'd go into like a fugue state and you wouldn't remember what happened. There are certain disorders that happens too.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wonder, like, what kind of screening would they been looking for? Like, do they clear him of any brain trauma, stuff like that?
If you want to jump ahead, so
no, if you're gonna address it later, I'll wait. I'm just curious.
No, I mean, this is fine. There's no spoilers for me telling you this now. They did an EKG. Is that the scan of your brain activity?
CAT scan, maybe? Isn't EKG? Well, EKG I thought was hard, but wait.
EKG is hard.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
EEG.
EEG. Yes. Thank you, Producer Craig. So they did a scan of his brain activity, and then later on, I think like 6 or 7 months later, they did another set of tests, and they compared them.
Right.
And they compared all of the tests that he had the first night he came back and all of the tests that he had 6 or 7 months later, in what he describes as a double blind test, meaning the people who were doing the test had no idea why he was doing the test.
Okay.
This second time, just as the doctors supposedly had no idea why he was doing the tests the first time. And the only difference they could find between the first test and the later test was, in the first test, he had a noticeable brainwave that was going front to back in his brain, that was absent 6 or 7 months later. That was the only difference they could find in all of the medical scans that they did on his entire body, from what I can tell.
Okay.
So let's talk about Travis's memory.
All right. Let's hear it.
So he remembers feeling this shock and just feeling an enormous amount of pain and then blacking out. His next memory is slowly fighting to regain consciousness. He said he felt for a long time he was coming in and he would just feel the pain that he was in, and he would pass out again. He would start to come back and he would feel the pain and he would pass out again. And he said this went on and on. He doesn't know how long, but it felt like a while, till it finally came about that he could endure it enough to actually regain consciousness out of the haze. He could tell he was on a table, and there was a soft gold glowing light above him. And he thought in his mind, my boys picked me up, took me to the hospital. I'm being cared for now. He can hear movement around him. It feels like it's doctors. And he just slowly starts to kind of get his bearings and realize that he is laying on a flat table. He looks down, he sees there's some sort of metallic device that he's never seen before across his chest. It kind of curves across his chest and connects to his skin under his armpits as he's laying there. And he starts to see the forms walking around him, and he thinks it's doctors. And so he's like, oh my gosh, thank goodness they've saved me. I'm still alive.
Right.
Till one of them notices that he's kind of looking around and comes and peers close to his face. And he sees their face, and he realizes this thing is not human. It is some sort of alien. He describes them as having an oversized egg-shaped head with oversized egg-shaped eyes that are about twice the size of human eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and all brown.
Mm.
There was a nose, there was a mouth.
Oh, okay.
They
Because a lot of
had,
times the nose and mouth are absent, or at least the nose is absent. Interesting.
yeah, these had a nose and a mouth, and he said, I guess the table wasn't too high off the ground. They were about 3 to 4 feet tall, and they were wearing orange or dark or brownish coveralls,
Mm.
and they were all just sort of looking at him. He had one on his right and one on his left. And as soon as he realized, this is the illustration that's in his book that he ended up writing. And so this is as good as an interpretation, I think, as he could come up with in his memory. There was two on his right, or I'm sorry, two on his left and one on his right. And he immediately panicked. Obviously, he was scared out of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
He threw the thing off his chest and he pushed the closest one to him that was to his left. And he said he remembered like there was zero resistance. It was like pushing like a toddler.
Oh.
And it fell back against the one that was standing behind it. And they both fell back. And then the other one backed off. So Travis jumps off the table. There's a shelf nearby with various instruments. He's just in a complete panic. He doesn't know. He grabs something he describes as like a clear tube.
Okay.
And just starts swinging it and screaming at them out of just sheer fear and panic. And they start to kind of walk toward him. And then they all kind of look at each other. And then they just turn around and leave the room and make a right out of the door. And Travis realizes like he can't breathe. Like he's in so much pain. He describes it as he felt like the insides of his body were dead. And also he couldn't breathe. So he was exhausted. He was in pain. He couldn't get enough oxygen. He was panicked. And so he leaves the room and he turns left because they went right.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts going down what he describes as a curving hallway. And there's all these doors, but none of them are open. And he starts to think, should I try to push one open? None looks different than the other. And then he sees ahead of him about 10 feet, an open door. And so he goes to that one. And he stands in the doorway of this room. He says it's like a circular room.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chair in the center of the room facing away from him. And he can't tell at this point if anybody's sitting in it. He says, he describes the light in the craft as like just kind of emanating from the roof and the walls. There weren't any particular lamps or lights other than the one above the table he was on.
Mm-hmm.
The room is just kind of dim and dimly lit, but there's no light source really. So he walks around this room checking the walls because it seems like maybe there's doors in the walls, but there's no handles.
Right.
And then he turns and he looks at the chair, and on each arm of the chair at the end, there are like controllers with buttons. And he thinks if I can start to push some buttons, maybe one of these doors will open and I can get out of here.
It's a good assumption.
So he, without sitting down, just starts to press some buttons on the controllers. And as he does, the room lights up like a planetarium, and there's like lights in like shaped like constellations and stars all around. Depending on what button he pushes, like they shift and they change direction.
It's a holographic star chart. What?
Steering, a driver's seat. Yeah. Who knows? And while he's trying to figure out how to use these devices to open the door, he notices there's now a human man standing in the doorway.
Wait,
wearing
an actual
blue
human?
Suit. What's that?
An actual human?
What looks like a human.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. In a blue suit with a glass covered helmet on that was frosted over in the back, as he describes it. He says the man looked like a perfect male model, long, wavy brown hair. I picture Fabio when he talks about it. He says his skin is like tanned but perfect. There's no blemishes. There's no wrinkles. He runs over to this man and he says, "What the hell is going on here? Please help me." Of course, he's like still panicked, can't breathe. He feels like he's dead. He's screaming at this human who he thinks is here to rescue him. And he notices that this human is just looking straight forward, not looking directly at him. And so Travis is like, "What are we doing here? What's going on? Please, like, help me." And so he's starting to wonder if this person can even hear him through the helmet, because he's just looking straight ahead. And eventually the man just waves his arm like, "Come, follow me." And Travis is like, "Great, awesome." So he turns and he walks abruptly. He very briskly back down this hallway.
Okay.
And Travis is like, "Please don't be bringing me back to that room." No, they go down a different door or take a different door that opens down a staircase out of this whatever craft or room or building he was in, into what looks like a hangar with 3 other vehicles in it. And they hurry across this hangar into what seems to be like an office or an office space on the other side, where the door opens and he is thrilled to see 3 more human figures, not wearing masks or helmets. He describes them as looking like perfect human beings, again, like the other one, like they were all kind of in the same family, related, but none of them looked exactly the same. Their skin was perfect. He makes a big deal out. No blemishes, no wrinkles. It looked like they're made out of porcelain, a perfect tanned porcelain.
So they were like made by the aliens to be the perfect human?
Could be. He says there's 2 men and 1 woman. In addition to the man that brought him in. So now there's 4 of them. He says that the men and the woman, they looked like perfect examples of their gender, whatever that means. I just take it to mean just like what you expect them to look like. So these are the illustrations that are in his book of like what his examples of what they are. They invite him to come sit on another table in the center of this room. And he's screaming at these. He's thinking maybe since they're not wearing helmets, they can actually hear me. What is going on here? Please help me. Can I please get back home? He sits on the table as they all kind of gently guide him to do. And then the female puts this mask over his mouth and nose that's not connected to anything. It just looks like kind of a bubble. And as she does, he falls back asleep.
Okay. Anesthesia of some kind.
He wakes up face down on the side of a road. In what's it called? Heber, Arizona.
Okay.
As he's looking down, he sees light illuminating the street in his shadow, and then he turns to look up, and as he does, he sees the light go away. So he says, "I don't remember if it was a hatch closing or if the UFO was lit up and it left." But he just had the feeling of being dropped off. He saw 3 phone booths on the side of the road. He recognized where he was because it was a road into town that he's taken a bunch of times before.
Okay.
So he ran to the closest phone booth, and it was out of order.
Oh, no.
And the next one was out of order.
No.
And the third one worked. So he asked the operator to connect him with his brother to come pick him up. His brother did.
At least he didn't. He wasn't like, "No, this prank call by," you know.
Right, at least. So we are finally. He's back, and he tells this story to law enforcement, who has already heard the story of the 6 friends of his that watched him get shocked by this craft. And so the media is on fire.
Right?
The law enforcement, the police are just being blown up. Like, why can't you see past this hoax? Let's find out where he really was.
Right.
So there's investigations into where could he have gone, who could he have hid out with, like what are the motives of this for this?
Yeah.
And lots of theories and everything flying around, but no one can make sense of it. And they've got these other witnesses, hunters, fishers, like it's crazy. And eventually he's contacted. He describes like becoming reconnected with reality as just like a long process. Like he describes himself as being very catatonic for a lot of the time, where he had just returned. Like his whole world got shook.
Yeah.
And now he's in a new world here on Earth where people are just begging to talk to him and ask him about what happened, and he doesn't even know how to explain it or wrap his mind around it.
Nope.
And so it takes him a while. Eventually a ufologist group is able to gain an audience with him and offers him a ton of resources and tests to try and help him work through whatever he's gone through. So that's when he goes through the hypnosis. That's when they do more health tests on him to make sure he's okay. And they just no one could find. There's obviously so many skeptics everywhere who are just like, oh, he's just trying to get attention. He's just this loser lumberjack who's trying to bring attention to himself. And all the investigations, nobody could come up with real evidence to disprove him or prove him wrong, which is wild. So he thinks about it for a long time, and eventually people are telling him, everybody in his life is just like, you gotta share your story, because he's never done an interview, he's never done this or that. And so eventually in 1978, so 3 years after the incident, he puts a book out. And so this is some fuel for all of the detractors or the people trying to debunk.
Because now he's trying to monetize on the.
Now he's monetizing.
Yep.
And as the book comes out, more people are demanding more polygraphs, more doubters come out of the woodwork. There's a guy by the name of Philip J. Klass who makes it his goal to debunk and prove him wrong. Like his life's work. He's like basically Javert to his Valjean. Like,
yes.
I am going to follow you till you trip up in your life.
Right.
This guy actually starts to bribe members of the crew.
What?
Like, I will give you $10,000 if you say this is all bullshit. And none of them will. None of them do. And so Travis, like, his life becomes talking about this event, whether it's press conferences, UFO conferences, whatever, sci-fi, whatever. And eventually they make a movie out of it, 1993, Fire in the Sky. So gosh, I can't math. Is that 15 years later? Yeah. So, but when they make the movie, it's a totally Hollywood fantasized horror film based on his story.
Yeah.
So he feels like let down, like, I got to tell my actual story. Okay. So he, like, his whole life becomes traveling the world and telling this story and answering questions about what happened to him. And that becomes his job and his profession and what he's known for. Back in 2015, he finally released what he feels is like his true movie story. There's a biography called Travis, the story of Travis Walton. That's the one I mentioned earlier at the start of the story. It's on Roku. You can check it out for free if you have the Roku channel. And like I said, watching that, like, what struck me the most is the interviews with his crew, who are now 44 years later, or however much time passed, 46 years later, are still just like normal human beings whose lives were totally affected by having this experience. it's crazy. Just a couple of years ago, he was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and it like lit a bunch more fires. And as far as like the media coverage of it, like just all being resurrected again. And now he's a 69-year-old man still telling his story.
Right.
That I've been for the past couple of weeks listening to his interviews. He does interviews professionally still on YouTube channels, and
Wow.
I'm sure he gets paid for it. But he's an old dude, and you can tell like it's hard for him to focus on any thought
Yeah.
for a long time. But
And were his interviews like, were they consistent?
yeah,
Like his story never changed? There
his
weren't things
story never
added?
changed. The crew's story never changed. There was never, this is widely regarded as like the most factual based case that you can find as far as the number of people who witnessed it and how it hasn't been able to been disproved. Still today, there are people who think it was a hoax, based on any lack of actual tangible evidence. Some people think it was the crew just wanted to get out of this logging contract, so they made this plan to do it. And they're all like benefiting somehow. But like when I watch these guys interviews, like it doesn't seem to me like anybody was lying along the way. This is still a huge part of his life. This is him. He's given a tour of where it happened to a group. This was for the documentary that he made. But one thing that they just brought up recently was they did tests on the trees in the area where it happened. And in the year 1975, the trees grew exponentially, like 35% more than usual.
Yes.
Also, another thing is
it's got to be like the radiation, right? Like if the
right
tree's
or
a
whatever.
superpower.
He talks. What strikes me about watching his interviews is how he is very capable of separating what he remembers to be his experience and the thoughts surrounding it looking back. And by that I mean like he's very willing to listen to people's theories and apply it. He doesn't get like defensive. He just like he really wants to consider what you're considering and see if that makes any sense. It's like he's still lost in the memory and trying to make sense of it all.
Well, that was, Barney and Betty's thing too, was not knowing was the struggle for them.
Right.
Once you can accept it and, it's better, but it's looking for that truth is hard.
In the end, the last interview that the most recent interview I've been able to find of him, they asked why he thinks the craft was there. And he had a very interesting theory. He said that area of Arizona receives the most lightning strikes in the world. And this is something that someone presented to him at one of his conferences that he was talking at. They brought him these amazingly unique and beautiful crystals. And they said, have you ever seen these? And he was like, no. And they explained that these are a very unique kind of crystal. And I don't know if producer Craig can find a picture of it on the fly just by Googling, but when lightning strikes the earth, it crystallizes. And so this area of Arizona where they're working has the most of these crystals on the planet.
Wow.
So his theory is today, as a 69-year-old man, he thinks that perhaps this craft was in the area searching for these crystals that they can't find anywhere else, that they have to come to Earth to get because it's a very specific kind of chemical makeup or whatever creates them and forms them. They were here looking for those and mining those. Is that what it is? What is that called? There's a very hard to pronounce name for them, but So his theory is they're there to mine those, and then these truckers pull up, and this dude runs out toward them, and as either they were taking off, it was like a grounding or a shock, so that the saucer could take off. It had to like ground itself electrically, or it was some sort of built-in self-defense mechanism from the saucer, that once Travis was so close and he jumped up from behind the log, it just automatically happened,
Right.
and shocked him. And then his friends left, and then he thinks today that in retrospect they saved him. He was going to die from what happened to him, but they showed him mercy. They took him on board, healed him, and then brought him back. But he feels so dumb. He thinks, in retrospect, I was just so scared. I thought they were here to harm me.
Right.
I was demanding to go home, but they saved my life. And that's his biggest narrative against all of the naysayers, is like, if they were here to harm me, if they were here to do bad, I would never have come back. I'd be gone.
Yeah.
The crystal is called fulgurite.
Fulgurite. Thank you very much, Producer Craig. So in the end, I don't write these out in an awesome poetic way like Amanda is so good at doing. But in the end, it's up to you to believe whether these 7 dudes had this experience, or it's all just a hoax for Mr. Travis Walton to be able to retire from being a lumberjack and just spend the rest of his life telling the same story over and over and over again. Yeah, what do you think, Amanda?
Ooh, it's another tough one, because there's a little bit less like tangible evidence in this one. Like the other one, we had the dress and the car and the and the star chart and so it's really hard. I was saying that to David before. It's like, and he kind of said the same thing. It's really hard to say yes, it absolutely did happen, because there has to be like this undeniable like piece of evidence, and it's just like ghost stories. Like it's so hard to get that to be like, yep, for sure. They all seem to believe that it happened, right? Like they're not. To me, it's not. They're not making a hoax. At this point, somebody would have offered them enough money. There's no reason for them to keep going after a certain amount of time.
Right.
So I do not believe it's a hoax. Something happened. But it's one of those things I can't think of anything natural other than like a lightning strike. Did he get struck by lightning and then like was delirious for days? But how did he survive if nobody helped him? Because it's cold. Like, like I said, there's a lot of things. It could be lightning strikes. It could be, as some kind of mental, like I said, fugue state where you don't actually remember things. You could be hallucinating, all of these things, but it's something. Why I love these mysteries is because I can't say that it didn't happen. Like I love that. It's a mystery for sure. That would be my mystery. It's definitely not a hoax.
And as I mentioned, there was that detractor that like spent his life trying to debunk, and he still hasn't been able to. But there was a show on Fox called The Moment of Truth, I think in the 90s or the 2000s, where they would take someone on and give them a lie detector in front of a live studio audience, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire kind of a thing. And it's worth mentioning that that Travis did go on this show and he didn't pass that lie detector. But as far as I can tell, he's taken like tons of lie detectors in his life. He mentioned like they would test him every time his book came out or the movie came out or
Yeah.
the documentary came out. Like it was a new test just to
Right.
see if
to
he
see if it was,
is he lying now.
yeah.
It's wild.
And like one that's done for a TV show, that's an outlier, like all to the other tests, all of those came back fine, no.
Right. And again, like I can't stress it enough. If you want to check it out, this Travis documentary where they talk to the 6 members of the crew now today or a couple of years ago as older men, just like to see them tell the story now is just like I can't call them liars.
No, I don't. Like, just based on everything you told me, like I definitely would like to watch that. But based on what you've said, I don't believe that they're lying at all. Like, for sure, something there happened.
So you know what the answer is?
What?
Aliens. It's probably aliens.
I was like, can we show? I wish we could, but it'd probably take more than we're allowed to. Like, there's this scene from, and then we'd have to, whatever. But there's this scene from Bolt. I don't know how many of you guys have seen Bolt. It's a Disney movie, but from a while back. But there's a great scene with the pigeons. And one of them is just, he's convinced everything is like aliens and conspiracies. And that's he just goes, aliens, and like fluffs his tail out.
Everything we've talked about on this show since the beginning of this show is aliens. So
aliens. But this time it really is aliens.
And speaking of aliens and space, we have one more duet.
We do.
Before we say goodnight this evening, we end all of these episodes with a Paul and Amanda duet. And this is another one where we chose the same song.
Yes, we did. But this time it worked out.
Because we performed it together.
Yeah.
Here is our duet of Drops of Jupiter.
All right, here we go.
Now that she's back in the atmosphere with drops of Jupiter in her hair, hey, hey, yeah. She acts like summer and she walks like rain. Reminds me that there's time to change, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And since her return from the stay on the moon, she listens like spring and she talks like June, yeah, yeah.
Tell me, did you sail across the sun? Did you make it to the Milky Way to see the lights all faded and heaven is overrated?
And tell me, did you fall from a shooting star, one without a permanent scar? And did you miss me while you were looking for yourself out there?
Now that she's back from that soul vacation, tracing her way through the constellations, yeah, yeah.
She checks out motor while she does typo, reminds me that there's a room to grow, yeah. Now that she's back in the atmosphere, I'm afraid that she might think of me as plain old Jane. Told a story about a man who was too afraid to fly, so he never did land.
Tell me, did the wind sweep you off your feet? Did you finally get the chance to dance along the light of day and head back to the Milky Way?
And tell me, did Venus blow your mind? Was it everything you wanted to find? And did you miss me while you were looking for yourself out there?
best friend always sticking up for you.
Even when I know you're wrong, can you imagine your first dance, freeze-dried romance, 5-hour phone conversation, the best soy latte that you ever had, and me.
Tell me, did the wind sweep you off your feet?
Did you finally get the chance to dance along the light of day and head back toward the Milky Way?
And tell me, did you sail across the sun? Did you make it to the Milky Way to see the lights all faded?
And that heaven is overrated. And tell me, did you fall from a shooting star? And one without a permanent scar, and then you missed me while you were looking for yourself. Na 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 na. Did you finally get the chance to dance along the light of day?
Na 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 na.
And did you fall from a shooting star? Fall from a shooting star.
Na 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 na.
And are you lonely looking for yourself out there? Yay! I love that duet.
Great job putting that together.
So good. Yay.
And what a fun night of storytelling. And
It was so
thank you,
good.
everyone. Still, like, I've been looking at the numbers, and
Yeah.
I think everyone who started the show with us tonight pretty much is ending
Pretty
the show.
much. Like I'm sure there was a little bit of fluctuation, but we had a good core group, like big core group that stayed with us. That's impressive. It's been, let's see, 3 hours, 12 minutes, and 49 seconds.
Everybody's all about the aliens.
The
That's what that
aliens.
says right there.
I love it.
We love you all. And once
Yeah.
again, thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Magical Mystery Hour.
Yay. All right. Our next episode will feature more mysteries.
We've yet to figure out. But
We'll get there.
we will. If you enjoyed tonight's stories and don't want to miss out on the next, please be sure you're subscribed on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss future stories, as well as great music and sometimes comedy.
Please leave the show a positive review and help more people who like this kind of show find our magical mystery hour.
We'd like to thank producer Craig Jackman and our social media team of Dari Mills, Christina Beelan, and Heather Dingus for your promotional support.
Thank you to David Benjamin for composing and recording our theme music.
And until the next mystery.
Good night.
Bye.